So welcome to another episode of Can You Survive This Podcast? My guest today is Rob Kugler. Rob, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hey man, I'm excited to be here. This is awesome, and I think I've told you, and I feel like I've just got to spit it out right now. Um, a lot of the guests, I mean, I've been listening to your podcast, and you have just an amazing uh collection of guests of awesome people doing a lot of awesome things, and I feel definitely humbled and to be here. And I feel like a lot of the people that I've heard, you know, on the podcast kind of like have things going on, have things like a little figured out, and they have a lot for other people. And I feel like I'm in that spot to where I'm still figuring things out quite a bit. So, you know, just giving you that, just letting you know where I'm at.
For sure. I feel like we're all just figuring things out. We're all doing the best we can from where we're at. But your story is amazing. And we talked the other day, and I really loved the theme of PTS-G, post-traumatic growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll touch on that, but why don't we, if it's cool with you, why don't we start like at the beginning, a little bit of like your family life, which was kind of unique, and like maybe how that led into your military service and a little bit of that story.
Yeah, sure, sure. Okay, so brevity is a challenge for me. So we'll see how we. Well, it all started. Okay, so I originated from like a 300 person town in Nebraska. Most oftentimes I tell people that I come from Broken Bow, which is, that was a big city. That's almost 4,000 people there. Um, but really, I started in Stapleton, Nebraska. So my mom, she was a single mom with three kids, and my dad was a single dad with three kids. And then, when they met each other, they're like, "Hey, what would be better than this is to just, move in together and then into a trailer and then have another kid." And there was two trailers put together, which people usually say, "Oh, you mean a double wide?" I was like, "No, it's a single wide." And then my dad built like a plywood hallway that connected to another single wide. Uh,
Nice. Custom.
yeah. And then they had me, and then
Okay, so you were the kind of the fourth, if you will, for both parents.
yeah, yeah. So like the connective link.
And
Um,
the seventh, so were you raised with seven or
so
six?
yeah, just for a minute, because that recipe didn't didn't bake a very good family cake, I guess. Because they got divorced before I was three, and so it's weird. Like sometimes in life, enough things have happened to where the other like one benefit of it, I don't know if that's the right word to say, is that, but I can chronologically uh score my memories pretty easily, because I was like, if this happened then well, they got divorced before I was three, so that I remember that. So I had to have been, because there's only a few select memories that I have um before they got divorced, but I do definitely remember, some of that life.
Hmm.
And of course, and I wrote about it in the book, but like it's like kind of cliche, but just as my mom, just like driving away, and looking out the back window, and it was like the last time the family was going to be together. Just remembering that moment. Um, but so then my dad, we moved to another town a few miles away. Um, and then also really quick, I guess just one thing I like to say about that family is that it was the Brady Bunch, because that's what happened with them. I was like, but Brady Bunch plus one minus maid, uh, you know, and then
Yeah.
in a little, trailer in Nebraska. Uh,
Hmm.
but okay, so then my mom, we moved to like I went with my mom to a new town, a little few miles over, and then we moved one more time to another town a few further miles, to the east, and then we were in just it was central Nebraska the whole time.
So you went with your mom, and was it three siblings? Was it like her,
Yeah,
three kids,
yeah.
and you?
So two older brothers and a sister,
Hmm.
and then they were the Dohenys. Um, and then so then my dad moved to Colorado when I was five, and then he got remarried, and she had a son that was like, by the time I was 7, he had a girl, a baby girl. And then my dad kind of like became grandpa. So then, that was like he already had moved, but then when he kind of like became grandpa, then it just kind of, like my having a father figure that kind of had attention for me, I guess, was just even further away.
Hmm.
So my brother Mike was my closest sibling, and he's who basically like I modeled myself after. And so my brother John was like 13 or 12 years older than me. So that by the time I was 6, he was already out of the house, you know. Um, and fast forward, so mom working, she was working as a nurse for a minute, but just as a CNA, and then she hurt her back. So then that was a pretty big deal because even though CNAs don't make great money as far as like not having education, it made more money than any of her other jobs after that. So, like just working as like a cashier, and then she washed dishes at a country club, and the because it's funny, like I still have this thing against about golf, even if I've kind of leveled up, myself. I still the golfing thing, like, there's a little chip on my shoulder to where I was like, since I wasn't a member of the club, if I wanted to go see my mom, I had to go through the back, like,
Okay.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
You,
It's
you,
like, well,
you
you're,
still not a big fan of the country club thing.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's just, like I still have a chip on my shoulder about some just, you know, rich people stuff, I guess.
Yeah. Do you play golf though, out of curiosity?
I don't, but that's part of the reason why, is just because
I I don't golf, man, and I played golf once. Some friends took me to like a really fancy course, and they're like, "You play hockey, you'll be fine," because I'm a hockey player, you know.
okay, yeah.
And man, golf is hard.
It is hard. Yeah, yeah. Because that's what my buddy I was the times that I've gone, and like one of my buddies was like, because I'm sitting there slicing or hooking in it, whichever it is, like either way, it's going not where it's supposed to go. And then one of my good buddies, I love him to death. He's like, but you got to put in the practice, man. You got
Yeah,
to come in, you got to put in the time, put in the tee times. And I was like, but that's the thing is, this is not a thing that I want to put the practice into.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'll come and I'll swing the club and like drink beers on the cart, and like I'll be a good time, but we're just gonna have to buy a box of cheap balls and not worry about trying to find them.
Right, right.
you
I
know,
when I went, I remember I started catching a little flow and getting a couple good hits on the
yeah.
ball, and
Mhm.
we had a caddy, and he goes, for this next one, I think you can take it right over the lake. He goes, you've had hit a couple good balls. I think you can go right
Yeah,
over the lake on this.
yeah.
I'm like, all right, let's try that. I go whack right in the lake. So, but
That's
anyways, enough about golf.
okay. Yeah, right, right. So, but another thing my mom did too that was great and that I was, exposed to, she worked, she was a caregiver in a lot of ways. Um, and one, she worked with, the title changes quite often, but from mentally impaired, you know, I trying to be trying to think either way,
Yeah,
people with cognitive disabilities.
my mom was actually a teacher of young children with I forget, they always change the title of it, but basically
Right,
like learning disabilities
right.
or like special needs is what they called it
Yeah,
back then.
yeah,
This would have been
right.
like the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, so same here. It was in that era. That's when this was. And she could actually like bring me to work with her, which was kind of blows my mind sometimes thinking about it retrospectively, like with HIPAA and all that kind of stuff.
It was the
And
90s and early
yeah,
2000s.
exactly, right. Yeah, yeah. And so I got, a lot of good. I don't know. I feel like I've got a lot of good things that have been well rounded from my experience. because then she also did in-home hospice care, just like for by herself, like no company, and really probably paid way too less or way too little for it. But so I had also, would be I could be there to see her work with people as they were passing as well.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, we didn't do too well in school. Kind of thought I was dumb for the longest time. I still am horrible at math though. Like I will never deny that. But, like later in life, I found out I was like, hey, it's not that I'm stupid. It's that there was really no focus on school because we were supposed to work. I got to go out for one sport. It was the maximum allowed because the other time, the rest of the school year, you had to be working.
Hmm.
Um, so worked on a ranch and then worked at McDonald's for a little bit because that was the first place that you could work as like a real quote job.
Hmm. Like 15, 16
At
years
15.
old.
Yep, yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
And that was, yeah, that was horrible. Like, but it's safe. I mean, I loved parts of it, but it was just like, like my manager, just like sometimes people just running a ship, like, you're like, man, just glad to be out of it. And then I don't know if people have any empathy, but they should for working the drive-through. Like what it takes to work a drive-through, man. Like you're taking someone's order, you're putting another order together, and you're like it's you're already working on the next, and then you're giving someone their order while you're taking someone else's. And they looks like they have more people now, but I'm just saying, and for anybody out there, if you go through drive-throughs, for one, you're already going through a drive-through, so you shouldn't be judging anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Try
But
try to be nice in the drive-through. I always try
yeah.
to be real nice in the drive-through, you know?
Yeah, me too. I try to do that. Pretty much everywhere. One of the things that I read somewhere or heard is just that something about like one of the best ways to judge someone's character is by how they treat hospitality workers, in
Yeah.
the service industry and stuff. And same thing with you know working as a waiter years down the road. But anyway, okay.
Yeah.
So that's why I said brevity is tough for this one. So we'll try to speed this up a little bit.
I
Um,
worked at a cash register for a while, so I appreciate this part.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. It's tough,
Yeah.
And then because there's times where, again, there's just like, because someone is working in that type of position, there are people that I feel like that then they have like this entitlement of like, well, that's your job. And then like, that's it. Like, sorry. It's like, yeah, but they're still humans too. And then like, they're working this job for whatever reason. I'm sure it's not their dream, you know? So like, let's all just try to be good people to each other.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. So then my brother ends up joining the Marines. Um, and my brother Mike,
Uh-huh.
and he had maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit here because there's just a little bit of trouble that people were getting into us kids. And I was the only one that made it through like staying at my mom's house through graduation.
Hmm.
Um, Everyone else moved out as soon as like they could. Uh, so like things just weren't easy. And I feel like some of those details I'll probably never really completely throw out there in the world. But the it wasn't like, hey, you've got to go to the Marines or you're going to go to jail. But it was, like, because that was a thing that was happening,
Yeah.
back. I
Okay.
don't think that happens anymore.
Okay.
Um,
Can you say like what kind of trouble related to like was this
yeah,
like
yeah.
partying,
It just
alcohol, or
yeah,
something
no,
a
no,
little more?
just like what's the word? Like just like well stealing stuff for
Hmm.
one.
Yeah.
Um, and just causing ruckus. And there was, like some like small little like vandalism type things and just running around with the wrong people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was it really?
Being youthful.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. That was my brother was like the one thing, what was a bummer too, is like the last straw that he got busted for when he was um working at like a country store, like a farm and supply type store, and they had toys, and he stole some toys for me, and that was like the last thing that
Wow.
sent him to the detention center. Um, and then we had to give him back too after he got busted for it, So I was sad about that because they were like cool little, like the die cast, like the real metal, you know,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
like little farm equipment and stuff. And I was like, wow, yeah, because we never had any of that kind of stuff. Um, and then so he went, to the like youth detention center, and it was kind of a gnarly one where like if like the kids had to put a rope through their belt loops and stand like in one square at a time as they're moving forward, and it was a place that you don't want to go back to, and that's kind of how that one was designed.
Hmm.
And then he got out of that, and when he did, one of the people that my mom was taking care of, um for the hospice care, his son was a rancher and still is a rancher to this day, but he was a paratrooper and a jump master in Vietnam era. And he this was going on, and he heard about it. He's like, why doesn't have him come stay with me for the summer? And Kevin Cooksley was his name, and he is a really great guy. I definitely miss seeing more of his energy. Anytime I go home, I try to make sure I link up with him. Um, but he just kind of knew that without direction, Mike was probably going to just continue a bad path. And he just
Hmm.
recommended like what the military, he just talked to him about the military and what it can do for you. And so then Mike ended up joining the Marines. Um, and I remember because I don't know how many parents um, would feel like this today, but like that was his Christmas present to my mom back in like 97 when he joined, was like, hey, here's my enlistment papers. I joined the Marines. And then my mom just like busted out in tears of just joy, you know,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and also probably just relief, just knowing like, hey, there's somewhere you're gonna go. Um,
Yep. Yep.
you
You're
know,
getting out of trouble's way,
yeah,
and now you
yeah,
have some discipline and structure,
yep,
and yeah.
yep. And so then when he went, so he joined up as a, 0311 infantryman. And he went to boot camp, and then SOI, and then he ended up getting stationed in Pendleton. So he was with 3-5 Lima Company, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. And he just was a stud, you know, uh, picked up sergeant in 2 years and 5 months in the infantry, which people, some people won't believe it, if you tell that story. But people that served with him, were like, oh, Doheny, man, they're that guy, is like the most, locked on, et cetera, type guy. He's like, I think he got meritoriously promoted like every time, didn't he? Stuff like that. Um, but yeah, so he's jungle warfare training instructor. And just he was just a stud. And it was just watching that, I knew that's, and in seeing who he became, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And then so when it came time for me to join, this is in 2000, and just waiting to be old enough. I thought I was going to do the same thing, just join the infantry. And then my brother was like, hey, don't. Even though he was the stud that he was, his words were, he's like, man, we got nukes, okay? It's like we're not going to be ground fighting probably again, right? And we, as troops, we just train. We train, and they run our dicks into the dirt. That was his, It's his words. And he goes, and then we're broken. And then we get out, and then guys are driving a truck for Wells Fargo. He's like, get go to the reserve and go to college. Just take you know, whatever job that they give you, and just you'll still be a Marine. You'll still be a Marine. Um, and so I did. I took his advice. I did wish that I at least picked my job, um, because I was a heavy equipment mechanic, is what I signed up to be, and how that went was I'm at the recruiter's office, and they call the unit. They're like, hey, what do you guys need down there? Oh, okay. Uh-huh. Hey, Kugler, you're a 1341 diesel mechanic. And I said, hoorah. Or, some stupid little 17-year-old motivated, thing. And like, yeah, I want to be a Marine. But then I did say, I was like, but Staff Sergeant, if we ever go to war, like, am I still going to be a mechanic? And then what's the word? Make this more grandiose than it happened. But when I tell this story, I was like, and then he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Son, you're gonna be a United States Marine. If your country needs you to go to war, you're gonna go to war." And I was like, "Yeah, sign me up." And because then you fast forward to when it finally does, finally get there, and then you take your rifle and just lock it in a Connex box, and it's like, boom, now you're a mechanic. And it's like, okay, all right then. That recruiter was full of shit. But okay, so then I join in
Yeah.
2000, and I go to boot camp, um, and get out, go to my MOS school in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and I got the Gung Ho Award there, motivated, or nominated by my peers for being the most motivated guy. I was second in my class. I was first for a while, then I got mono, and then just tanked one of my courses, and then so I fell back as far as like scores go. So,
Hmm.
but I was like, but at least I got that Gung Ho Award, which is probably cooler, really, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, um, and I remember the gunny there, being like, finding out. He's like, "So where you headed, Kugler?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm going back to Nebraska." He's like, "A reservist? That's a tragedy. We need Marines like you in the fleet." And I'm like, "Oh," gave me my you know, little ego boost there. And then I come back to Nebraska now. And that's
Hmm.
one thing that's weird about the reserve thing, is that there's like, it's a big culture shock to then just all of a sudden, then now you're just back to where you came from.
Hmm. Yeah. What do you do then?
Yeah. And it's like, wait, what? And then like things changed, and like I remember there's just like this little cocky thing that just I always laugh about. Just with some of my friends, and it was getting a little cold, and one of them was shivering, and I was just like, yeah, I don't do that anymore. Like something with and I was like, just looking back on that, and just thinking like, oh my God, what a, but at the same time, but that was true. Like I wasn't shivering, because I was like, I'm not gonna allow myself to just sit there and shiver like a weak little civilian. But
Yeah.
there I was, a civilian, basically, just going, 1 week in a month. And so right away, you know, um, well, I guess there was the bigger punch to the gut was, uh, for one, like what the GI Bill actually was back then. It was 50% off of tuition, and then $272 a month. So that's going to require a full-time job still, to go to
Mhm.
school. Like you're
Yeah.
not going to get to go to school and that, you know, and not work full time, and if you don't have you know, other money somehow.
Right.
And then the second gut punch, which was bigger even, so was that when I went to the University of Nebraska, and is at the admissions office and applying for education. I wanted to be a like early, not early childhood, but elementary ed. Um, I found out that I didn't have enough credits from high school to get into the university, and I
Oh,
didn't even.
wow.
Yeah, I didn't know that was
Had
a thing.
had you graduated from high school?
I graduated from high school, but you know, didn't. I remember the visit with the advisor, and I do, like kind of remember her saying something about that I wasn't going to have enough, like science or math.
That actually happened to me. I went, long time ago. I went to community college and I didn't have enough math from high school. I was like you, I wasn't good at math. So I
Yeah,
took whatever to graduate, bare minimum from high
right.
school. And then when I got to community college, they were like, yeah, you need to take like, depending on what you want to major in, you need to take like up to 1 or possibly 2 years of like math that's not even college credit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the rudimentary math or
yeah, yeah.
oh, it's remedial,
But
remedial.
what I did was I found a major that only required like a little bit of math. So I found a way around that, you know?
Okay. Yeah, yeah. No, I get you because that's what I ended up doing.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So what'd you
well,
do? So what'd you end up doing?
yeah, so I went to the community college to do the academic transfer is what it's called. So you go there and you just get all your undergrad or not your undergrad. Well, yeah, your undergrad prerequisites. Prerequisites. I can't even say that word.
Yeah, your
Prereqs.
prereqs. Yeah,
Prereqs. We'll just call it prereqs.
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 Yep.
And uh including the math and the science. And then like you, I had to take the remedial ones, just that like they're not even college credit. Like this is just to help you get to these next ones. I got 100% on the first one on the beginning, and then I was like, heck yeah, I got this. And then intermediate, I failed that out with like a 20%. Like I dropped out, like after.
Mm.
But it was also tough with that one. The instructor was tough, because he had like he went to math fairs on vacation, and like there was people asking, I remember one of the students who failed out of his class actually approached me like a year later. She's like, hey, you took, yeah, yeah, we're actually trying to sign a petition that he can't teach remedial math anymore.
Too hard.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I just remember I just raised my hand one day before at the beginning of class, and it was a quiz day, and then he goes, "If you don't know it now, you're not gonna know it." All right, yeah. But anyway, because
Yeah.
so um, I went to fire protection technology is what I ended up studying, and um, so I've got pretty bad ADHD or something in that regards that has as we talk, and because if I continue to tell you like more like how many different things that I've started, it's pretty typical of like the first chapter of the book, Driven to Distraction. You know,
Is that the first chapter of the book?
it tells because that's all I've made it through because I couldn't concentrate to get through the whole thing. I also have the book Codependent No More, but I just really need someone to sit next to me and help me read it. Um, but so like the first chapter of Driven to Distraction, it just lists people's lives that they've like worked a million different jobs and started a million different things, and they can be really good at things, but then just not be able to just stick with the one thing and follow it through. And then
Mm.
that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm because once we get down to it, I'm almost 42, and I'm working on something else right now that we'll talk about. And I'm like, but that's the thing though. This one's been steady for a long time.
Now you did write a book though that came out like years ago, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's there's I've had some like things that have worked really well.
And
Um,
we're actually gonna the military your military story leads to your story of your book in a way, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we'll get there.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. But I was just like, because where my head went was like, oh, so I wanted the fire protection technology, but this because this also didn't help was that um I got I was supposed to get deployed. Um, and so, man, I don't know if in my head I'm like, can your listeners track through all this? I'm trying to do good for you here. Um,
I'm with you so far.
okay, you're with me? Okay.
Yeah.
So the because I was motivated, like on the Marine side of things, when I found out that I couldn't go to, like I couldn't make it into college before I went to the community college, I was like trying to do whatever I could to go active duty. And
Hmm.
then my recruiter was like, "Hey, why don't?" Or yeah, my recruiter was like, "Hey, why don't you come work for me at the recruiter's station in Lincoln, Nebraska?" So I did that for 6 months, and then tried to like through the unit. Um, there was a tour coming up called Unitas. It went along Central and South America, and
And what year was this?
yeah, that's what I'm trying to think because,
It was pre 9/11, right?
well, that's what I'm trying to remember because I know because when 9/11 happened, like we're all trying to volunteer, but they just didn't need us yet. Because I think it's because this is before, it's right, but it was before '03 when we invaded Iraq was when this was. So it would have actually been after 9/11. Um,
Hmm.
then that when I had because all of us were trying to volunteer,
Everyone's trying to get deployed now. It's
yeah,
like it's
yeah,
like
yeah. And that's
early-ish after 9/11, and now everyone wants to get deployed and go.
exactly, yeah, because that was one of the things to where I kind of envious of some of the guys that hadn't joined yet. Because like being in the reserve as a mechanic already when 9/11 happened, we were kind of like the big majority of us would have done things differently if we were enlisting right then, because then as a mechanic, like and as already in, that you're already in the system and they're going to use you when they need to use you.
Hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so then that's when I was like, what can I do? What can I do? And they're like, well, there's this tour along Central and South America that you can do called Unitas. And I was like, okay, that sounds cool. And that one wasn't combat related, but that was, it's actually humanitarian missions where they build bridges in support of local humanitarian issues. Supposedly, I don't know. I didn't make it there. And I think the entire operation is done. Um,
Oh, so
but
they told you that you can go do this, and you said yeah, but then you ended up doing something else.
yeah, yeah. So which was nothing. And the reason why is because so when that happens, I boom, I'm gonna get to go there. So I um don't go to school yet then. And then it's like uh I ask my CO, okay, because then we invade Iraq. There you go. So then when the invasion happens, talk to my commanding officer. I'm like, hey, sir, if so now that we are, we've completely declared war, we are there. And is Unitas still going to happen? And he's like, yep, that's no word yet that that's getting canceled. And then they asked for volunteers to to be deployed to Iraq, and then I'm trying to raise my hand for that, and he said same thing. Commanding officer said, "Hey, Cougs, can't take you out this list. This is where you were." And he's like, and then it's my ass if you're not there because I've put you on one of these deployments. And I'm like, well, how do I know if this is going to go? And he goes, you'll know if it doesn't go on because I was supposed to leave, say, January 15th. And he
Hmm.
goes, if it doesn't go on January 15th and you're still here on the 16th, then you'll know. And then that's how it went down.
Yeah.
And then because of that, I actually missed the next 2 full years of deployments that like my buddies went on because that's when they were selected. So like by volunteering, I got myself booted years out of the, rotations. And then I volunteered multiple other times for like individual augmentee type stuff to where I'm not going to go with anyone from my unit. I'm just going to go join somewhere where they need somebody. And because there's like this, you know, I was I was a good Marine and I was like a better Marine than I felt like anything else. And because also in the meantime, I taught preschool for a few years during this. I worked as an arborist, for an arborist, not as an arborist. I was just the grounds crew guy picking up, the limbs and throwing them in the chipper and everything,
Hmm.
which was actually a really sweet job. I loved it. Um,
I think that'd be pretty nice out in
yeah, it
nature.
is. It is. It is. But sometimes like the grounds crew folk can be kind of rough sometimes you're working with, working with a buddy that was just like, I killed a man before, Rob, and
Oh man.
which is true. Like he was, did however many years for manslaughter, and I'm like, so are you threatening that you're going to kill me now, Dale? Is that what
Well,
this?
he did it. Dale did his time. So,
Yeah, yeah. It's like
you
you
know,
did your time, But I was like, so is this what you're telling me? Like, are you saying this right now because you're going to kill me over arguing over some day, And like,
he's got
so
like
that
a giant like limb cutter like in his
yeah,
hand,
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
a
Is one of the
giant
things,
scissors on a pole.
he's gonna like throw me in the chipper.
Yeah.
And I wasn't scared of him, but I was just like, dude, really? Is this what we're like? Come on. So
Yeah.
the let's see. So then yeah, I'm back in school for a minute, and then another deployment that I'm supposed to go on. Like, and I'm told that it's happening. It doesn't go, and but I'd already pulled out of school, and then like another time that it was going to happen, that I got the call that I was going, and I was going to be with a CAG, a civil affairs group, and that's like a kind of a sexy job because you're going to be like in the cities, amongst the people. Um, and I was really excited about that because that's kind of where, what I was looking for is just to be involved with things, and especially I kind of come alive with people, and then I do pretty well with helping like strangers and like kind of being someone with like the mediator, and a lot of it comes from just how I grew up, in
Mhm.
between families, right?
Yep. Yep. Makes sense.
And so when I was told I was going to go on that one was literally the day that I was signing a new lease that we were moving out of uh, a place. Me and a couple of buddies were getting a new place together, and then it happened that morning, and I was like, guys, I'm not signing the lease. I'm going to go, and then that one didn't go, and then I was left. You know, homeless would be a hard, like a harder word, a harsher descriptor, but I
Yeah.
was left without a place,
Yeah. Yeah.
like I was like definitely houseless.
Yeah. You had to
I
find
was
a
like,
place. You were left
yeah,
in between in
hmm
limbo.
yeah, and then so then I end up, just staying at a buddy's place for a minute, and then so like that whole reserve track, and then I think the important part of sharing that story, and I don't know if I shared it well enough, was just to be like, some people like, oh, reserve, huh? And I was like, man, on the time that I was on active duty, um, everything's just right there for you. And then if you are going to deploy, you then, you still have to have things in order, but it's not like you have to have an entire other life that gets put off in pause while you're trying to do this. And then that happened to me multiple times, and then it didn't even go.
Hmm.
So that also kind of like my GI Bill benefits are expiring in October. I'm going back to school uh again, like to get my master's in photography. And I have time. I mean, I have credit. I don't know if that's the right word, eligibility. Like I have 19 months left of the GI Bill, but the timing is expiring. And so I'm applying for voc rehab, but we'll see. I'm gonna have to battle it. And that's its own thing. But there's years that of having it that You know what I mean? Like I could have, they just kind of got pushed away
It's
from
tough
me.
to plan, I guess, when everything is kind of in limbo like that.
It is. Yeah, it is. And the um and I think the funniest thing too is like, it's like, yeah, but it's about respect, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah. Um as far as like I have respect within my own community, and for a decent amount of others too. But like when I go to the American Legion here, I move to a new place and then I meet some people and they're like, oh yeah, and then details come out and like, oh, reserve, huh? And then I was like, yeah, I get it, I get it. I was like, but it's 10 years, and it ends up being three years of active duty, but it's fine, whatever. I also get it too because I'm sure I'd be the same way if I, especially if I was like an '03, active duty guy. You
Yeah.
get like because I'm usually the first one to self denigrate, or what's that word, self
Right.
deprecate.
Right.
Yeah, which one of the things I like, I've kind of switched that to calling it self-defecate.
Yeah.
Um,
But you did end up deploying eventually.
so I did, yeah, yeah. So, and then here's the thing about that too. So my brother, just to put in perspective, because like, so I'm watching my my buddies deploy, and then I don't like the guys that I went to boot camp with. There's the two of them. We ended up being from the same, going to the same unit, and we were best of friends. Avery Mon, Nick Peterson, Mon, Pete, Cougs. We called ourselves a tripod. And, it doesn't help anyway that our reserve unit, it's not like the National Guard. The National Guard, they deploy as a whole unit. We deployed as still bits and pieces within ourselves, you know, um,
Hmm.
and and like the unit cohesion just didn't even exist, and it's so inefficient. And so I got a lot of whiny gripes about that too, but try not to. But so I watched them deploy, and that's part of me like trying to get um and then they come back, and then it's just different, because now they've had the experience and you haven't, and you just feel like a really big hole left in your little service heart. And so my brother, the warrior that he was, he gets out, like, so when he finishes his first enlistment, since he was at 97, right? He finishes his first enlistment in like April of 2001. And then he re-enlists as security forces. And then he gets stationed in Kings Bay, Georgia, and which he liked to refer to as the armpit of America, um, which is really kind of not too far off, even just like geographically and humidity, wise,
Right. Yeah.
Um, and so they guard nuclear warheads there. It's a naval base, but the Marines are, the security. And so then boom, 9/11 happens. And then you've got Marines going to Afghanistan. And Mike is, again, just the level of dude that he was, is now, like, in his words, driving a Humvee around a base and pulling on the fence, and like, living in Groundhog Day hell of, he was like, we have to check out everything from the armory every day, and then we've got to count everything, and we've got to turn it, like we've got to go turn it back in. Like we've got to count all of our ammo and our grenades and all that, and then turn it into the armory and then check it back out. He's like, so he's like going nuts,
Hmm.
as that's happening. And then his optimistic projection of not going to war again in our lifetime was incorrect. And so he was looking at going back into the infantry, and he had some buddies that were uh, contractors, and they're like, man, this is a way better vibe over here, in this world, in the contractor world. Um, why don't you come sign up with us and instead of going back into the infantry? And it was also like his fastest way to just get there.
Hmm.
Um, because I think 3-5 had maybe just come back home by the time he was getting ready to get out, and they maybe they weren't going to go for another year or something if they were going to go again. Uh, and I don't know if that's all true. If anyone's listening and being like, "Oh, wait a minute," that's just where how I remember this him telling me the story,
Hmm.
or at least my own recollection. And so he did. He joined up with a security company called like SOCSMG, like Special Operations Consultants, and then they switched it to something a little bit more patriotic. They kept it SOC, but they called it Securing Our Country. Um, and so he went on a like one mission with them that was pretty, had a lot of things going on. Um, and then he went on another one with them like the following year, and then it was kind of helping train the Ugandans, the TCNs, third country nationals. Like when I was in TQ eventually, um, the when we're going into the Chow Hall on the this it's a Marine base, but the Chow Hall is guarded by Ugandans with AKs, and you're just giving them your ID, and they check your ID, and then like that's who's because it's just cheaper than paying a Marine to do it,
Hmm.
right? Because they're paying these dudes $1,000 a month, but these dudes are used to making like $200 a year,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So like
Yeah.
they're doing really well by doing this, but
And you
uh,
guys, this is in Uganda?
no, this is in Iraq.
Oh, this is in
But
Iraq.
yeah, yeah, but they're third country nationals. So like is the term that I was uh made aware of.
Got it.
Um,
TCNs. That's what
ECN.
TCNs is.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so because like I made uh really good friends with our little bus driver. He was from Sudan, and same type of a thing. He was actually buying a house in Iraq, in Baghdad. Um,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. And I like one of my little things that fun stories, and somewhere I've got pictures with him, but I bought him shoes for his wedding, and like, you're not supposed to do any gift trading like that with any of the TCNs, but um, just I got him my ex shipped him to me, um, and I tried to like give them to him, and then he just wouldn't. He's like, no, I'm not going to accept it. So then I
Oh.
tried to, yeah, and then try to sell it to him, like for like half price, and then he's like, no. So then I like gave him another price, and I still like didn't charge him full, but I just let him think that he was charging the full price. Um, but anyway, so back with the Mike and training the Ugandans. He's coming from being a Marine and like the level of discipline that we have. Um, and like a negligent discharge, so like letting your weapon go off. um like I never experienced it. Mike had never experienced it as a Marine either. It's just a really big deal.
Hmm.
And he had it was like happening like once a week with the Ugandans.
Whoa.
Yeah, he was like, dude, he's like this. He's like, I can't. And so he was like, never gonna go do it. He was never gonna do it again, basically. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying that is like when he came back from that one, he's like, I can't handle doing that again. I think I'm done.
Hmm.
So fast forward, in back in my story, uh, that now I'm finally gonna get like I've got one more chance to deploy. By this time, I've the Marine Reserve contract is 6x2, where like the active duty is 4x4, so it's 4 years active duty, 4 years IRR, the inactive ready reserve, and so I had already done my six, and I was still coming to drill, and they didn't even know, like our unit didn't even know that I was. It's called non-obligatory. Um, and I just kept showing up, just waiting to get deployed.
Mhm.
like maybe I get deployed, and and then when on this last deployment, then I'm like, hey, Cougs, you're gonna be on this deployment. And like, yeah, I've heard that before. Let's see let's see my orders. And orders still never showed up. Uh, but just enough things started happening to where like, okay, and then because there was multiple people, this wasn't just me trying to go on my own individual one. This was like, I don't remember how many of our unit was going at the time. Like maybe say there's 20 of us, but it was actually like enough people, you know, were like, hey, yeah, this is going to where I was like, okay, this one's gonna go.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden it got flagged like, hey, Kugler, you're about to fall off contract. You can't go on this deployment unless you re-enlist. So, in order for me to go, I had to re-enlist with zero, it's like with no bonus. So like my bonus, like I re-enlisted for another 3 years just to um get the chance to deploy. And
Wow.
yeah,
That
yeah,
was,
no,
but that was really the sentiment back then, like right after 9/11, like early 2000s. People were like, "We're ready to go," right?
yeah,
Well, that was like the
yeah.
feeling, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah, I mean, if you ever see the picture, like there's a picture somewhere of the towers, and then there's just this buff eagle just sharpening in its talons, you
No,
know,
I never saw that one, but I can imagine that.
yeah, it's like yeah, and it's like oh yeah, they amped us up, man. And that was the thing. It's like, what do you even do? Like, who are you? If you're not a part of that, right? Is and I know a lot of guys because I still feel the same without experiencing combat, right? And but I was even though I was there, so like for the guys that feel like that they, I've met guys that didn't deploy at all and how they feel about that, and I was like, well, I even if you do and then you still don't this, because there's also even like the movie Jarhead, right? Like where I mean, they were snipers. They were snipers, man. And then like like they still didn't have action, and like and anyway. So it's a weird thing, and it's something that you know I know people that have been through combat and have been injured, especially, and that are just like, hey, that's nothing you want to wish for. And I was like, I understand that, I don't want to wish for that, but there also is just that, what is it all for if it's not for that, right? Especially because of let's see, maybe we can save this for when we get there, which is so when I'll go back to like when I find out that hey, I'm deploying and I do re-enlist, then my brother's excited. He's like, hey man, I'm gonna do everything I can. I'm gonna go back again. And we're gonna be there at the same time. And he's like, it'd be cool if we could like meet up and like, like what kind of like maybe the paper could do like a little story on it, and it'd be for mom, like two brothers, uh and so he ends up getting there before me, and I was so I was so pissed by it because even though like because we went to the Camp Lejeune first for our pre-deployment training, and we were there forever. Um, like it got pushed back to when we were supposed to like actually, head to Iraq, and it seems like a recurring theme, right? Of things not being quite organized. Um, and then Lejeune was like, you know, it made it worse that one of our young lance corporals got I don't know if I don't know if he ended up getting a DUI, but he got busted by MPs like he was partying with a deployed Marine's wife. And
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah.
He was
And that
partying hard.
yeah. And then that's a huge no-no.
Mhm.
Joe is a person that's supposed to only exist in mythical areas. And if he is, he's not supposed to be your, like one of your guys. And so that was really tough because I liked this kid, and I had a really hard time ever forgiving him for this. And I kind of treated him that way actually the whole time afterwards. And now I would go back and apologize to him and see how he's doing and all that kind of stuff. But and forgive him for that. But the reason I mention it is that that happened on our first Libo weekend, and then like we were there for what was it, 5 months? Or was it either way, months? It felt like years. And we got our Libo restricted immediately because of that.
What is that?
So liberty is like your ability to go into town and just get out of the base. And then so basically like we were in base jail, you
Hmm.
know. And even though we were sergeants, because we were pre-deploying, like we were still like three to a room. Um, and typically active duty sergeant, you'd either be off base because you're married, and or or you'd have your own room in the barracks at least.
Hmm. So you're deployed, but you're on like base restriction, and your brother is over there at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, because we're just in Lejeune. This is just North Carolina,
Oh, oh,
you know.
oh, 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 got you, got you.
Yeah, yeah. So we're just right there. Um, and then but Mike just gets to go right over there without all this pre-deployment training. And so then again, the entire pre-deployment training is, the majority of it is spent like we're looking for we're doing like IED line training, like we're out like training like how to if we're on the convoy and what to look for IEDs, or if we're on foot patrol, and we're doing some like village raids, and it was pretty motivating. It was like, oh man, this is it, like we're going.
Hmm.
um and a lot of there's some like react drills to like where if a base had been penetrated, then you're out there to fill the gap, or trying to think there. And some of our guys went but to 29 Palms and really really uh did more of the combat stuff even to a higher level. And we did the rules of engagement classes and sat through a whole bunch of that, and the escalation of force. And then we finally land in Iraq, and we're standing there on the tarmac, and like the soles of our boots are already starting to separate. Like, okay, it's hot. It's hot here. And what's crazy about this is that, so again, I was saying that how they just take pieces of us from our unit, and kind of put
Hmm.
us together. Well, we all first met in Quantico, Virginia. And then that's when we found out who we were going to be with. And then when we got to Lejeune, then then they put us in different, like it was different leadership, different structure, and kind of different platoons a little bit. And then um, when we got to Iraq on the tarmac, they split us up in different ways with different leadership again, to like with people that we hadn't met before. And yeah, and like again, the continuity of care was just continuity of care. That's funny. Continuity of leadership. Preschool was continuity of care, which sometimes preschool and Marines really aren't a whole lot of differentiation there.
Right.
Uh, but the and again, I'm hearing myself, and I'm like, God, I'm just bitching this whole time. And I'm not trying to, because I miss the Marines like a lot. And this is what people that would come back later would always say, was like, I came back after a couple years of inactive reserve, not because I missed the Marine Corps, but because I missed the Marines, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's like I mean, there's just undoubtedly no argument with that. I feel that so much, but there is a lot I miss about the Marine Corps as well. But just these things um, are as one of the biggest regrets that I have is not staying in to try to like help with any of these things. Because when I was getting out, I was asked to put in a warrant officer's package, and I felt like that if I did, that's what I would have done was have tried to have like fixed, done anything that I could to help people not have the same experience that I did as far as like just being jerked around.
So yeah, explain a little bit. What is a warrant officer's package?
Yeah. Well, and a warrant officer is like a field expert. So like you actually you would become it's you become an officer to where you, I'm trying to think of exactly the best way to describe it. Um, because they can go on to be like limited duty officers, and then like you don't need the bachelor's degree to have that rank.
Hmm.
But then you're not going to be unless appointed in some for whatever reason, you're not going to be the company commander, but you're going to be what you're going to be is the expert in your field. So like I would be the warrant officer for the maintenance section or for the engineers. And you just I think what I always respected about the warrant officers the most, or saw it as a place that you'd want to be, is that everyone had respect for them in a way because um, you just know it's right on their rank. Like so, say it's got a bar, like the lieutenants have just a silver bar, right? That's the first lieutenant, but then the warrant officers have little red hashes in them. So just seeing them, you know exactly right away that was an enlisted man first,
Got it.
right?
Got it.
Right. So like you just know that they're not just coming out of Brown or Louisiana State University with their degree in English, and then now you've got to salute them. Like you're like this guy has at least been a sergeant. Because you have to be a sergeant before you're eligible to apply to be a warrant officer. And anyway, but that's just a position that where you can affect change more so, and then especially implement leadership and implement things that you want to pass down.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
but I didn't, and I often wonder. I was like, man, who would I be today if I had done that? And then also, could I have made a difference? Uh, because and what I was getting at with that, especially, is this next part is that then when we make it to our job site, there's a like basically we have our platoon has a little compound that there's a bunker that used to be housed a jet on all Tecumseh's air base. Um, like so there's these bunkers there, and I could show you on Google Maps, which is crazy. Like I can just go over there, zoom in, find the lake, and without coordinates or anything, and then just like zoom in and like pinch and be like, oh, and right there's our bunker. Uh,
Hmm.
and the so that's where we built like our offices was in there, inside the bunker. And there's Connex boxes that were served as other, little offices, and then the shop, just under some camo netting, where the heavy equipment was. And so we get there, and again, all this the pre-deployment training of, all right, yeah, I'm just all of a sudden picturing too, like while we're on a hump, is what we call them, our marches, our, uh, just, and this is like full gear, all that. We've got a first sergeant out there, just like, we are warriors, we are killers, we are freedom fighters, and like, "Rah!" And then like that's all this like, hoorah, motivated, um, spirit, like the esprit de corps was high. And boom, we're in Iraq. We show up at this spot. Our rifles are like, okay, hey, just go ahead and lock your rifles up in this small little Connex box right here. And now here is a crane that you have only seen a picture of in a book, and it is broken down into like it's like a 25-ton capacity crane. It's big, big monster. Um, and it's it needs to be fixed, and it's also there's only one of three of these in the entire Al-Anbar province. So there is a red light flashing at our headquarters that also flashes back at the Pentagon that says that the cranes are not at operational capacity. So fix it.
Nice. Did you pull that off? Did you guys manage to get that thing fixed?
Oh God, like it took forever.
Yeah.
And with the help of the civilians that were alongside of us that were getting paid double of what we were, and plus, while they were just getting to chill in cargo pants and freaking t-shirts, you
Mhm.
know, and so then again, it's like, man, so because that was my biggest thing was that we wasted so much time playing Marine, which I also understood because, so people can argue very much. It's like, well, because that's what they really needed you to be. They needed you to be there as an occupying force, in case that you were needed for that. And then so it's kind of like understood that you might not be that efficient at your job. That's how some people justified it, because like it's better to be overtrained in the combat side than it would be to be undertrained.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
it's like, which I totally understand. I was like, but also it sucked to be inefficient mechanics when it turns out that that's actually your job, you know?
Also true.
And yeah, yeah. So then I ended up operating equipment more so than fixing it anyway. And I was just naturally good at it, and they needed it. It was a need, so I did that working in the mine roller section. Mine rollers are they look like a trailer, but it's in reverse. It goes into a front mounted hitch, and they have kind of like big golf cart sized tires. Some of them, they were bigger at first, and then they got re-engineered multiple times. And their job was to cover all the surface area in front of the vehicles, um, and try to catch IEDs and detonate them, and then absorb the explosion from it.
Hmm.
And so that's the way we were just fixing them, and it was pretty easy fixing of what we were doing because if one had been blown up, that's gone. There's no repairing that, but they would just get broken just from use. And so I just take a forklift, lift them up, and then work on them that way. And the it's yeah.
I like to think that that work you did saved some people, you know? Those things
Yeah, it could
probably
have. Yeah,
saving lives.
yeah. It could have had purpose for sure, for sure. I mean, it definitely did have purpose. My head was just going to where, um, because that was not my original job, and then because I was going to tell you that other story, but again, I hate being hyper aware sometimes. I try not to care what other people think, um,
You're good.
but
You're good.
yeah, well, because I'll just go ahead and tell you. So, I mean, my job, I was supposed to be the floor chief, right? I mean, so I mean, I was floor chief, right? So because I was a sergeant at the time, and when I told some of my Marines that I was like, "Hey, we're in this together. Sorry, I don't have more information. Like, I wish I had already deployed. This is my first deployment. So experience wise, we're kind of at the same level. I just have rank, right? So we're gonna work through this together." And we had my um supervisor, the staff sergeant at the time, he was just getting stir crazy. He's like, I can't handle this paperwork, man. Like, because that's what it was. There was a lot of paperwork stuff and then there's like, kind of some bureaucracy that goes around it too. And then so he's like, I gotta get out of here. Gotta get out of here. Get me on a convoy. I got to do convoys. And because he was a former combat engineer before he joined the reserve. And well, it just so happened that transportation company had fired their staff sergeant. because he just wasn't found fit to lead. Um, and then so he went over there and took that job. So where did that staff sergeant go? Came to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so then he was just so then he became my immediate guy. And even though I'm griping a lot, now I was also really well respected, like when I was in, and I would probably be, telling you a different story if you were talking to me, and I'd probably sound a lot different if you were talking to me, while I was still in. But this guy, he had come off of embassy duty, is where he was coming from too, and he kind of like had this Napoleon complex, like 5'3", or I don't know, maybe he was 5'6". Um, hell, let's put him at 5'1".
Yeah.
Uh,
Little guy. He's a little
yeah,
guy.
yeah, yeah. But he was just doing stupid stuff and just, borderline hazing stuff, and the like making Marines fill sandbags for just these tiny instances. And then so there was this big old pile of sandbags, and there was this tool that got broken, and he comes over and you know he's like, "Hey, Sergeant Kugler, I want you to have your Marines take these sandbags and go build a pyramid on the other side of the lot." And I was like, why would you want me to do that? And he goes, "So I can come over there and make them tear it down." And then I was like, "And what would be the purpose of that?" And he goes, "To demoralize them." And I was like,
Wow.
"Right, right." And I was like, "So like, do you think you're Jamie Foxx?" Because Jamie Foxx's character did that in Jarhead.
Oh, did he do that exact thing with the
Yeah,
pyramid?
yeah. Like it makes him build a pyramid in the rain, and Jake Gyllenhaal's out there, and like it's like this big thing, and I was just like, "Right, you can at least be original with your
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
right?" And then he's like, "How are you going to question me? I'm a staff sergeant, right?" And I was like, and I told him, I was like, "Do you know what?" I was like, "Do you know what really bothers me is that you are supposed to be the person that is my mentor and that I am learning leadership from, and yet I see none of it from you."
You told him this.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow. Good for you.
yeah. Because he was, yeah, and that's because this is where I'm like, I was like, "Dude, you are sorry, you're like you're not good at what you do, and you shouldn't be here."
Did you not make the guys make the pyramid?
No, I started building it myself.
Oh, okay. Because if he says make the pyramid, someone's got to do it, right? It's
Right,
like
right.
kind of
So
like
then
it's got to
I'm gonna go.
happen.
So then and then he's over there in my ear saying, "Hey, Sergeant Kugler, da, 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 da." I'm just like walking, and at this time I was all yoked too, right? I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm like, just, and then I'm just like just going. He's like in my ear, and then I'm like, if you have a problem with my Marines, you have a problem with me, okay? And I was like, and I'm not gonna let you play these little fuck games with them, right? And I'm showing you this is how it's gonna be. Well, so then as I'm doing this, as I'm building it, then he just comes over and he's like, or actually I went and got one of my corporals and I put him in charge. I was like, "Hey, Corporal Hole, you're in charge. Yeah, you're gonna be shop chief while I'm doing this." And he was a dude that had rolled over, and he was an active duty guy, and that's where active duty guys really do have the good leg up, is because during their active duty training, they're actually mechanics in their regular everyday life, before they deploy, right?
Hmm.
Um, and he had rolled over, meaning that he had deployed, and then he just stayed over there because people would choose to stay in Iraq rather than go back and spend another, year in Lejeune. Uh,
Wow. That's saying something.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, but I put him in charge while I'm doing this. So he comes over, the staff sergeant comes over and then tells me that he's like, "Hey, Kugler, you're fired. I'm putting Corporal Hole in charge." And I was like, "Oh, really?" I was like, "So you're the girlfriend that I broke up with that's trying to tell me that we're broken up now?" Because I was like, I just put Corporal Hole in charge, and so I'm like, whatever. He's like, "You're gonna go over to mine rollers, and then you're gonna have a little timeout." And I was like, "Oh, timeout, huh? Okay." And that's gonna help me be a better leader of this shop, is by going over there to mine rollers. And then again, because this is I just don't want to sound like this insubordinate, a-hole for like that this is how I was my entire time. Like I was good. I was again, this was like up until this point with this particular person, even through all those things that had fallen through, I'd still stayed motivated and I'd still stayed like, like a hard charger. And so then after I was kind of done building the pyramid, which I was about halfway done with it myself. And then the Marines came back from Chow, and one of the other sergeants came and he got all the Marines. And then like the entire platoon just came and just built that pyramid and we just finished it.
Nice.
And yeah, yeah. And because this is, I think I'll just go ahead and skip to this part now, um, which was that years later, I found out, and because this is just like such a huge lesson, because I took this and I ended up getting fired from my position and everything so that my Marines wouldn't get screwed with. But I never told them that's what was happening. Like I found out years later when someone asked, like, "Hey, whatever was that you got in trouble for that you had to build that pyramid?" And I was like, "Oh, that lesson might have landed a little bit harder if I explained to everyone what what was going on, you know?"
Yeah, you got to tell them, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's got to be like, "Hey, Marines, listen, this was here, and I'm not going to let anything happen to you on my watch," you know?
Yeah, yeah. I got to let you know that I did it for you, so to
Yeah, I
speak.
know, right? Yeah. So I was like, well, that was a big, all right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was talking to our SNCOIC, our staff non-commissioned officer in charge, who is Gunnery Sergeant Ortega Facio. Let me tell you something, Sergeant Kugler. That's actually pretty spot on, Gunny. That was a big thing of what I would do is impersonations of my of leadership and there's always people were always like pushing me to like to move to LA and try the acting thing. And I always wanted to be on Saturday Night Live, and impersonations were always my thing. And that was always the plan once I got out.
Hmm.
Uh, so the anyway, um, I'm talking to Gunny O and about this. I was like, "What do you think?" Because like I can fight it. I can say no, I'm not going to go over, and we can, you know, get this staff sergeant like kicked out. Like, should we do that route? And then he said, "Well, I'm struggling with this guy too, and I've talked to our company commanding officer, and we're trying to like let this guy learn his ropes as a staff sergeant and stuff." So, um, and then he's like, and, and honestly, I feel like maybe it's good if you're not like working with him because I'm afraid you're going to beat the living shit out of him.
So
And then
wait, they sent you somewhere else because you got in trouble?
like, well, it was per the staff sergeant's like where he tried to fire me to, and he's like, go over to the mine roller section. So we're talking like it's only 100 yards away. It's still within the same compound,
Yeah, yeah.
but
Okay,
just a
yeah,
different job, right?
yeah.
And so, but what I just felt like that it was just that validation of like he didn't say that he was afraid I was going to get in a fight with him. He was afraid I was going to beat the shit out of him, and I was like, hey, as long as that's the way you feel about it, like I feel good about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Nice,
Right?
nice,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. So bigger story, I email my brother about it, and because we got to talk a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
And I told him, I was like, man, what do you think? Like, should I should I fight this guy? And I now that I don't mean not in a physical
Right,
fight.
right, right. Like, should I push back on this
Yeah,
or yeah.
yeah. And then just and then and this is what my brother said. He's like, dude, you're deployed. You're already there. You're doing enough. Just choose the path of least resistance from here on out.
Hmm.
And I was like, again, this is coming from the stud Marine, and I was like, he was just God, like his word was, God.
Hmm.
And so I was like, okay. And because over at the mine roller section, they needed me there, and I was, operating the equipment, and it was a good time.
Yeah.
Um, but it just wasn't. I wasn't operating at the role of a sergeant should be.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was,
Hey,
like
are you down to pause real quick? I need to use the
yeah,
restroom.
yeah, yeah. No worries.
So you emailed your brother. And he was kind of like, take the you're deployed, you know, this is where you want to be, take the path of least resistance, and then where does it go from there?
Yeah, so I did. And I was like just kind of content with being where I was at, and not like trying to fight for something that may not have just been worth it. Um and just worry about just kind of like biding my time until I get home. And then Mike was going to try to meet up with me a couple different times. He was hoping he could make it like on the Marine Corps birthday, November 10th, and then maybe Thanksgiving, and that didn't happen because he was stationed. I don't know if station is even the right word for it, but where he was at was outside of Ramadi, so he wasn't very far away. And we did get a little um, feature in the paper for mom, which was pretty cool. Little, but we weren't together like we were planning on. Um, but then he wasn't able to make it at Thanksgiving either, and then I ended up getting finding out that basically I needed to call home that he had been in an accident was the message that I got.
Hmm.
And so how you could call home was that you could go to like a in that bunker there was a phone to where you could call military bases with it, and you could call a military base, and the military base could patch you through. And then I got a hold of my brother's wife, and it was like out of the movies, this static. She's like, shh, Mike, shh, shh. Like, hey, I can't hear you. And she ended up having to tell me, like 3 or 4 times. It's like, hey, Mike was in an accident. His convoy hit an IED, and I just knew that he'd like lost a leg. I just knew it. I'm like, ah. And then she's like, and he didn't make it. And I was like, yeah. So okay, now what? Um, so it turned out, like he had taken a mission. It was supposed to that he wasn't originally supposed to be on, but it was going to come through TQ on the way back. So he took that so he could stop and see me. And then so there's that's there. I don't know. I don't blame myself for it. But I definitely like it doesn't change the fact that that's the truth of that.
Yeah,
Um,
man. Sorry for your loss.
yeah, um, it's tough, and that's where one of the things of like again we've talked about post traumatic growth. Um, One of your other guests, and I'm sorry I didn't have them written down who it was. I meant to, just because then we can get back to this maybe if we've got time for it, because it'd be
Hmm.
really great to tell you about one of my recent experiences with plant medicine. But
Yeah.
uh, was mentioning like how people can kind of get stunted in their growth from their last like trauma.
Hmm.
And so even as we took a break just a minute ago, went to the bathroom, and even when I was there, I was thinking, I was like, man, just thinking about that. How much of this story, how many times have I told this particular part of the story? Because this happened when I was 25. I'm 42 now. And I still feel like a big chunk of my maturation and my evolution has been halted because it still lives there,
Hmm.
like, and especially with my brother being my older my main mentor, the voice that I hear in my head that guides me is still the voice that I hear of him and that my mind creates of him, or however we want to look at that, from when he was 30. So I still am like hearing what a 30-year-old was telling a 25-year-old, and not like what a 47-year-old would be telling a 42-year-old.
Hmm.
So, um, that's kind of like where struggles are. However, um, growth wise, I just feel like my empathy has just, you know, stretched out just further bounds. My perspective of things and like what matters. There's times where I can help people not feel bad about things that they think that, like they're really stressing about. And I'm like, this really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Um, a lot of like I feel like I do decent on helping other people with their grief uh,
Hmm.
as well. And then also a million things have happened in my life because of my military service and honestly, like because of my brother's death, I guess if you look at it that way, like what because of what that experience did to me, there's just been a lot of things that I've said yes to because of that. Um,
Hmm.
and because of it, just like poof, he's gone. Um, I mean, one of them, he left a letter with me that said I should chase my dreams, and I did. I ended up moving to LA and went enrolled in the Groundlings Improv School and you know kind of excelled in that program. And I booked my very first audition in LA, which was pretty awesome. And I was like, the agent that I had at the time called me a booking machine. Like I mean, it was just
Nice.
on it, right? I mean, to be called that was pretty dope. And again, going out there with no experience, like the people that I would, there were other people like me out there, um, as far as like just kind of just going out there because I mean, there's a lot of people that move out to LA because their friends tell them that they should,
Hmm.
and then some people do all right, and then sometimes it's like, maybe your friends, were wrong. uh,
So you said your brother left you a letter that said to follow your dreams. Can
yeah,
you tell us a little bit more about that?
no, okay. So the letter, um, it was the manila envelope that he gave me before his first deployment, and it said to be open in case of funeral. And I
Wow.
had that with me through like three different moves. Yeah,
And did you
three
almost
different.
lose it? You like had to like find it a couple times. You're like
I was
moving. You're like, oh
afraid. I
God,
was so afraid.
where's the
Yeah,
envelope?
I was so afraid that it was gone. I was like, oh my God, this letter is. Please tell me I still have this letter.
You have a very cinematic life. Like a lot of your stories, I see it like a movie. Like you told the story about like leaving your family and you're looking at like out the back window of the station wagon. And
Yeah,
then like the letter, open in case of funeral, that's very like
out of a movie.
it's like out of a movie, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But that really inspired you, huh? You opened the letter and he said follow your dreams and you went after it and you found some success out there out here
Yeah,
where I am in LA.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The because what was surprising is like Mike was a very detailed person, and like like had logs of stuff and not super um like emotional type. Uh,
Hmm.
and so I expected the letter to be like, I want my baseball coach to go to here. I want that, like kind of like here's what you do. I want to
Right.
be, I want my ashes here, or like that kind of a thing.
Right, right, right.
Instead, it was he spoke to everyone in our family, um, and he called our mom his hero, and talked to my brother and sister about them being good parents, and talked about he called his wife his beautiful bride. Um, and then and he's like, and to my little brother Bob, oh how this letter gets harder and harder to write. It's like you've got more talent in your little finger than I do in my entire body. Um, you've got dreams, chase them. And then can you hear that fly in here? Do I need to get rid of it?
No, I
Okay.
don't. But I did want to say, from what you told me, it sounds like he was right. Your mom does sound like a hero to me, helping children with special needs or whatever the term is now. And, doing hospice care, and she sounds like an amazing role model for you guys, and you sound like really good leaders.
Yeah.
Um, and that's really cool. Like the, chase your dreams and it actually being, you found some success and you booked some acting work. And then what's the deal with your book? We keep mentioning it
Yeah,
as we
yeah,
go
the book.
along, but
Yeah, yeah.
what's the story there?
Okay, okay. Well, I'll finish this other. And also, I've got to tell you that my mom was also born 70% deaf, and she's been blind in one eye for like the last 30 years.
Oh, wow.
So just to put that out there too, just to give more of the um just more respect to my mom. When you factor in those two things, and she's 4'11". Um,
Wow.
so I think she's actually 4'10" now.
I heard that
And so
happens.
yeah, yeah, the little osteoporosis gets, especially the ladies, unfortunately. But I just feel like that ups her respect level when you know that, that's she was also, battling with that. And then never complaining about it. Um, so okay. So I get we the LA thing is happening, right? And it's working, and I was married at the time, and I ended up uh my wife wanted to move back home. She was missing home, and for a minute I said that I would too. And then I was like, I can't. I've got to stay on this mission. Like this is what I'm supposed to do. And then, you know, it and then so we got divorced, and she moved home. And then even though I have a whole new life now, and so does she, and like there isn't, like there's no resentment there between us. Like we can communicate well with each other, and I'm happy, because I'm trying to save that for later, trying to save my happy ending for later. But I still, like, it was in journals. I had it in journals about, like, I found it. I read it like last year, a journal from like when I was in fifth grade, about like how I vowed to never be divorced, like I was never going to get
Mm.
married, if you know what I mean. Like, and so like to be divorced still, um, and to like feel like that I was selfish, um, at that level, uh, like is still something that I still struggle with today. And so like that broke me, and I left LA
Mhm.
because of it. And because people that were in my ear at the time when I was like, I don't know what to do. And there was like I literally remember I was on this commercial shoot for a Jeep. All I do is just get out of a Jeep, but I made good money on it, and like I was like, this is and I was still booking more auditions like this. And I was like, I'm gonna make it. Like I don't have even if I'm not never known, even if I don't ever land like something of like someone would think is success. I'm like, I'm doing stuff that's getting paid, like
Yeah, you're paying your bills
yeah. And then
and
like
more
doing that
probably.
is success,
Yeah.
and because that's one of the things that, my dad once said. He's like, are you disappointed that you didn't make it as far as you thought you would in LA? And I was like, I'm disappointed that people don't understand how far I made it in the little of time that I did, and that I chose to leave,
Yeah, I,
like,
I was gonna say I'm out here in LA, and if you come out and you start booking commercials right away, that's like you crushed it. That's considered like, crushing.
yeah, thank you. And I was like, that's how, and like, because everywhere I'd go, there was like cascading enthusiasm, right? Like, and like people would want to work with me again if I worked with them.
Mhm.
And I feel like I haven't had that feeling in a while. Like, and I still do miss, like, I still feel like, you know, I would love to get back in the game somehow, some way, sometime. Um, I don't know if that's ever a possibility, but I figure it's going to be like after my kids are grown, So
Give
like,
your agent a call, you
yeah,
never know.
exactly. Yeah, right. Well, it's funny. My manager, and this is just, I just have to put this out there because again, you want to talk about cinematic stuff. My manager was like 5'2" Italian dude named Guido, wearing a like a neck, big V-neck type, or suit or shirt, like showing chest with a necklace and stuff. Um,
It just keeps getting better and better with you
I
with you.
know, I know, I know, because like, and that's where because within that time, I started doing some stuff with veterans organizations because I had this like kind of freedom to where I wasn't working a 9 to 5. I was, booking something here and making some money. And then because I actually parted ways with Guido when I responded to tornadoes with Team Rubicon.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
it's a disaster relief organization formed by um, Jake Wood and a few other Marines when they responded to Haiti. And
He Team Rubicon, the PTS-G thing comes from them, right?
yep, and that's why I was bringing that up again, was exactly for that reason, is that I it was through Jake Wood that I learned the term post traumatic growth. Um, and because that's where sometimes it can be like a little bit of a decision, to be
A,
like,
a
okay,
recurring pattern on the podcast seems to be like a big time low for people, as painful as it is, also tends to be often is the catalyst for a big growth spurt.
yes, yep, yep.
Yeah.
And then because it's, especially for me, I feel like I talk about like this perspective pie, basically, when you start out in life, or you could look at it as lateral limits for any marksman out there. When you talk about like putting, you know, left and right lateral limits of to where you can, fire your rifle to make sure that you're not, um, engaging any friendly fire.
Hmm.
Anyway, so all you can see is what's in front of you, from left to right. But as so you got this like narrow little slice of pie, and that's your perspective. And then things in life, as you grow, as you experience, that just kind of, gets to be a bigger circle. Um, and then as there's some things in life that just knock those limits way wider, you know,
Yep.
and things like death at that level, are a huge one, trauma at those levels that really can bump it up. And just 2 seconds, sorry, my dogs are barking at something I want to make. So when I'm in, I booked a role through on True Blood,
Oh,
and
nice.
but I did. This is when I was in Oklahoma responding to the tornado with Team Rubicon.
Oh,
Yeah, and then Guido, I told him, I was like, hey, can we reschedule? Because it was I hadn't booked the full role yet. It was they wanted me to come in and read for it. So I just would say book the audition for it.
yeah.
And um then he's like, hey, you got to come back. This is a big one. And I was like, uh when is it? And then like, can we reschedule it? And like, because it wasn't shooting until afterwards. And then when he emailed them, he CC'd me on it and said that I was at home, on an emergency matter, if I could reschedule it. And then I told him, I was like, why didn't you tell him the truth, man?
Yeah, I was just gonna say he should have just said he's doing Team Rubicon
Yeah.
tornado relief. I'm
Yeah.
sure that's you
I was
definitely
like,
want to say that for sure.
yeah, that's why I told him. I was like, for one, if you don't understand that honesty is the better option.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
two, if you couldn't understand that honesty is actually the better story, you know?
Exactly. It's always the best option, and in this case, a much better story. Yeah,
Yeah.
well said.
Yeah. So then I was like, so then I, parted ways with him, and that kind of started slowing the acting stuff down. And that was part of again, my wife at the time was like, so then what are we doing here? How am I supporting you? Like I thought we are here for the acting stuff, but now if you're denying, you know, paid acting roles for volunteer stuff, that's going to be hard for me to support. And again, that's the ADD stuff, because I'm made it, started with the cycling organization.
It's also a tough life for someone who's not in it. I feel
Yeah.
like that goes for like the sort of Hollywood life and the military life. It's hard on like the partner who's not in that life as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I'd heard that again, that was some of the stuff that was in my ear there when I was thinking about things, people being like, well, if you haven't been divorced 3 times, then you're not really trying it in Hollywood.
You're not in the business.
Yeah, exactly. You're not in the business.
You gotta suffer.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I was mentioning that Jeep commercial for, is that because it was the director of that commercial that was the one that said that to me. And but the anyway, so throughout this whole time we'd had my ex and I had a Labrador, and she really, like, her and I connected really well. And she we fought over who was going to keep her, but not in a possessive way. It was more of like neither one of us wanted to take her from the other.
Okay, yeah, very
No.
loving way.
Yeah, yeah. And then she was like, I think she should stay with you, you know. So then she did in LA for a while. And then when I decided to leave, I was going to travel with her. See, I'm trying to think of how this whole thing works.
Because there was
Trying
a road trip. You decided that you basically were going to leave LA and do a road trip.
Yeah, I wanted, yeah, to do this road trip and figure out where I was going to end up, where I was going to live. And um but there was going to be I had a potential to have this job with this cycling organization that helps, veterans recover their injuries through cycling, and that, like, it was going to be at the medical center San Diego, the Navy Medical Center San Diego, so, like, just primo spot. And I had hesitated originally on whether I wanted the job or not. And because of that, I kind of lost my spot in it, but I was going to go fight for it. So I was showing up. I was going to go to this ride across Kentucky and really just prove myself. So I'm headed home. I'm back. I stop and see my dad and grandma, stepmom, and grandma in Colorado, and then I'm at my see my mom and my sister in Nebraska on my way to Kentucky. And then I get a phone call on Good Friday, and my grandma had a stroke that I just saw in Colorado, and I had to make the decision, like, am I going to go on to Kentucky, or am I going to turn around now and come see my grandma? And we had the conversation. It was like, go to do this because that could be a life changing career thing. And they had grandma, you know, I just saw her. The um, grandma would probably want me to go, so just go.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get a call on Easter Sunday. And I guess I'm kind of telling you the whole book. Like, but needless to say, uh, the call wasn't to tell me that grandma died. It was my on my dad's side. So, my because that's who this grandma was, right? My dad's mom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my two sisters and brother were on their way to go see her, and they got in a car accident, and then my oldest sister was killed
Oh my God,
on
I'm so
Easter
sorry.
Sunday morning. And then so then I got with my stepbrother and went and picked up my brother and sister from the hospital and drove them back to their family in Iowa. And with she had two adult kids, but have kind of special needs, and but there's like some nature versus nurture stuff with that. So the boy is doing well now. He's on his own. The girl's not. She still needs care. And the Yeah, so that was another big blow, another big perspective thing. And then grandma ended up dying, a little while later. And so I was able to help with the funeral and everything, and I ended up not going to Kentucky, obviously. And now that I was back in Nebraska, and it's like, now what? So I decided to finish. It had been like 10 years, and I decided to finish that fire protection technology degree. And how I did it was I went into the office, and because they had their own separate building for the fire academy there. and I talked to the guy who was he was the head of it back when I was taking classes, and I was just like, "Hey Terry, what would it take for me to like what do I need to graduate?" And then he said, "Well, I mean, if you started today, you could graduate in, like June." And so like and I was just driving through still, like
Mhm.
I didn't have like it was just and so I went to the bookstore, bought the fire shirt again and my textbooks, shaved my beard in the bathroom, and then sat down for class. And I stayed and finished the degree. And then at that point in time, I got a call. I guess it was like so. Bella had been limping a little bit, and ends up she had osteosarcoma, and she was only 8 and super just healthy looking. People thought she was only like 3 or 4, and they're like, "This is already in her lungs. You're gonna need to put her down."
Oh no.
Like that's probably what we would like. You should take her leg for sure, or put her down. But even if you take her leg, she's probably gonna have 3 months.
Wow.
So that was that hard decision of like, so are we gonna do that? Like, are you gonna spend the money on that just so that she can live 3 months? Like, are you gonna make her is that traumatic? And like, what's the easier thing to do here?
Mhm.
And then decided to uh, take her leg, and it was like the best decision ever. She was so thankful for it. Uh,
Nice.
yeah, because when we'd been treating her limp for months, and the vet that we were going to just said it was like a injury, like a sports injury type of a thing.
Yeah.
So we had been, I had been treating it, but it just wasn't getting better. And so that's for anyone out there, like get those x-rays faster, because if we could have done that sooner, if we would have known, it might not have spread to our lungs. We might
Because
have caught.
it was tumors or something?
Yeah. So like the osteosarcoma starts off as like just kind of the bone just kind of just like grows these little spider webby looking things. And then once it becomes metastatic, then it was just in her lungs, and it looks like, cloud, her lungs were all cloudy and things were forming in there.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, we're gonna take a road trip. We're gonna do this. And we're just I because I knew that I wanted to see all 50 states. Um, I wanted to make it to all 50 states. That's something I really wanted to do. And because I wanted to see more of the world. And a lot of this was because of just the perspectives of my siblings dying. I was like, that's what I want to do now. Is like my goal is just to see more of the earth and see more of living things while I'm still alive, because everything that you plan that you want to do in the future, you never, like my brother wanted to do all these things after he retired, and my sister talked about things after she retired, and then they just both just got like poofed out of
Mhm.
existence. And then so I was like, that would became my driver, is experience and all that. And I thought I thought I was going to stay in Nebraska with Bella until she passed, and then I would take that trip afterwards. And then I envisioned going to this, like seeing the uh, East Coast again, like but the Northeast Coast, and then like being there without her. And like the way that made me feel. I was like, no, I need to go with her. And I almost, even after I made that decision, I still almost didn't go, because as I was packing up to go, the I got a call from the groundlings, and the wait list was up for their like the next level class, which to get to is a big deal. Like if you're in the groundlings or any of that kind of stuff, you go back for that class if you made it to it. Like,
Yeah.
but and I thought about it, and I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe this I'm just gonna say yes to this. I'm gonna go there. Um, and then I like look at Bella, and I'm like, man, what's LA gonna be like again with you now? And like, how much am I gonna, there's there was a time, like I just felt like I'm gonna this isn't gonna be good. And so I said no to the groundlings thing, which then it's a no. Like then it's just a no. you know, like there's no callback again to get back on that.
Mhm.
Bella and I hit the road, and we thought we'd just go to Chicago as a start off, and then just like if if it feels right, we'll keep going. And it did, and we did, and uh, with one stop in the middle, it kind of breaks it up. Uh, we if you don't count that, we were on the road for nearly a year and a half. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, and seeing like because of the cycling organization and because of Team Rubicon, and then of course my own military experience, I knew people like across the whole country. And so while I was out and about, I could use Facebook and just be like, "Hey, I'm here." And then I would meet up with people. And Bella was just having the time of her life. We went to the Northeast in the winter, which part of it is like it's easier. It's actually easier to travel with a dog in the cold, right? Because if you're not worried about the heat. Um,
Oh, okay, yeah.
and it's to car camp and all that kind of stuff. It's easier to keep yourself warm than it is to cool off.
Mhm.
And we also, by doing so, there was a lot of campgrounds and stuff like that where no one was at all. Like, so like again, cinematic wise, I felt like we were living in a movie because like so many times it felt like the world was just her and I.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And did she get to see snow and stuff too?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so I've got, you know, pictures and stuff of her. And because if like on my Instagram, people can go back. People want me to share pictures of her, more and more pictures of her. And I was like, you can go, like they all exist. I share every now and again, I'll share another picture of her, or another video if I find one. And it's funny. I've lost a ton of followers because people just they don't like, they're not interested in my life anymore beyond her. Like they fell in love with her, which is
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, yeah. What's your Instagram?
Yeah, it's just at my name. So at Rob Kugler, Robkugler.
Cool.
And so you'll see pictures of, my new life there, which is, it's just pretty good. It's like, again, living my happy ending. Uh,
Nice.
but yeah, so uh, long story short, we travel. She makes it like to, I think 43 states is what she made it to.
Mhm.
And she ended up passing away in Colorado. And I brought her ashes on um, to Oregon, was my 50th state. And that is where I met um, a woman who had traveled with her golden retriever, um, and made it to very many states. She traveled clear across the country, and she was going on a mission as well, like for healing after losing one of her best friends to cancer. And she had actually like was the caretaker for her friend through her hospice. Um, and now we are married with three dogs and an almost 4-year-old girl and an almost 2-year-old boy.
That is so cool. The cinematic life of Rob Kugler just keeps being a movie. Oh, how did you manage to, just by sheer coincidence, you managed to meet someone who was also on a dog
Yeah.
road
So
trip?
yeah, yeah. One
There's
of her
no like
friends.
internet dating app involved here.
So there was not. But it was like one of her friends' husbands was following me, and then sent it to Kristen, and it was like, "Hey, you should follow this guy." And then she just started. She was following me, and then she just said, "Hey, I'm over here. If you want to meet up, I saw that you were here." And I was like, "Oh, that was an old picture. I just posted it. I'm actually here now." So like we messaged like 3 times, and we were just in different places. You know. Um,
That's very good. You never want to post in real time.
yeah. Right. Yeah. 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 You never know. People just be showing up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
And
that's awesome. Congratulations.
yeah, thanks, man. And that's because that to me is our kids are the happy ending, and all these things that I griped about, and I'm so glad that we're already made it to here because now we can talk about more things. All those things that like griped about before, even though, like oh this happened and then like that happened and man, and then even the tragedy that has happened. Every single one of those things had to have happened for my children to exist. Like,
Good
and
point.
they're pretty awesome little beings right now. Even though like some of the toddler stuff, there wasn't a terrible twos, but man, our daughter's a three-nager right now. Like but the yeah, we are and then here we are, like we just were able to buy a place here. Um, we're there's a lot that we'd like to continue to do. We've got a lot of things to figure out, to be comfortable. Because by even though we're glad to not be renting anymore, um, our cost of living doubled overnight. Even though,
Mm,
yeah, that's a mortgage. I'm just gonna holler at my pup real quick.
yeah.
Mackie, come here, bud.
Got you. I love
Um,
what you said about that. All the hardship and tragedy led you to sort of where you are now, which is having this beautiful family, which is like, the big storybook ending. So that's a
yeah,
beautiful way
yeah,
to
and
look
so
at things. Beautiful
and that's
perspective.
and that's where the book is. So the book is titled "A Dog Named Beautiful,"
Hmm.
and it takes you right up to the meeting of my wife. That's how the kind of that is the happy ending. And I know that's not the best way to sell the book by telling you that part, but at the same time, it does, you know, it does give you the happy ending because people are like, I don't want to read the book if the dog dies.
Mm.
Well, the sad part is that every dog dies, and that's the hardest part about pet ownership is that when you take a dog on into your life, you know that it's going to die before you do, and it's going to die way quicker than is fair.
Mm.
Dogs just don't live long enough, and I love the quote that I think someone shared that like a kid had said about dogs don't live as long because humans have to figure out they need time to figure out like what the meaning of life is and how to be happy, and dogs just already know that, so they don't have to live as long.
Yeah, it's beautiful. They're already there.
Right, right. And so the um cool thing is, so on Bookwise, and I was actually able to get some permission to share this today, which is kind of cool because I just haven't shared it because I haven't know if it's going to be real, but in the background, um, there's for years there's been potential that this actually could be made into a movie,
Yeah,
and yes, and it's being like what I can share is just that like we're talking like reps, like in development through reps that are through CAA. So if
amazing.
anybody knows that realm, they
Yeah.
know that's a serious player in the game.
Hmm.
Um, and so there's writer, director, producers involved. Um, and it could be a really beautiful story, and it would be exciting. And then for me, I just don't talk about it a ton because I just want it to be real, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
know that game.
right.
I know that game. Well, I hope it becomes real too, and I'd love to follow the story along and keep up with it and hope it does become real. And especially because I keep saying throughout your story, I'm like, man, you have a very cinematic life. So hopefully they pull that off in the movies and we can see it on Netflix or something.
Yeah, 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 because that's where they were talking, and then because and that's a pretty big thing. Like pretty big movies are happening on Netflix now.
Exactly.
Um, and so it's interesting just to see that kind of shift from there because a while ago it was like something happening on coming out on Netflix is kind of like that old like straight to DVD, like oh it's like, but that's not how it is anymore.
Yeah,
It's
that's where you want to be now.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
So you
um
did your road trip, you did your
yep,
book,
yep.
and do you want to tell us a little bit about was it last year that you had a plant medicine journey or was it more recent than that?
Yeah, it was actually just in March, so just a couple months ago. So I've done I've still like working odd jobs. I worked at the mountain here, like near Mount Hood, as a lifty, which was a fun job. Like in kind of the community was fun. The job was actually really hard. If you go skiing next time, anybody that skis out there that's listening, everything that is in the ground that is not the ski lifts, comes back out of the ground every night. Like all the queue lines, all the ropes.
So
Um,
you're doing all that.
yeah, yeah. Like you do that before people get there, and then after people leave, and then digging a lot of digging, a lot of old broke, you know, back breaking shoveling work. So
Mhm.
give your lifties some love. So then I did some um like there's a little local art center for kids. That's pretty cool. Worked down there for a little bit, and then like kind of like my preschool days were kind of coming back up with that. But I've still wanted to. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out me, who I am, what I'm doing, and I'd like to continue writing. And I've got some children's books that have some potential and that might be getting ready to actually finally happen.
Cool.
I got to put more work into that. And I am going back to school for photography because that's another one of my big passions. And that really came out with Bella and I. She was my muse for a lot of stuff. Taking pictures of her on our journey, and then a lot of pictures of other things that I still have terabytes of those photos that I would love to turn into something so that people can like own the you know, the visual part of our journey as well. And I actually got accepted to a scholarship that I can't tell you which one it is yet because they haven't announced it, but it's worth pinning, and then I can come back in the comments or something like that and be like, hey, this is what it was.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. Yeah, keep
yeah,
us posted.
yeah, we'll do because it's a pretty big deal. I'm really excited about it, and then it's something that I'm very honored to be a part of.
Congrats. I'm
Thank
guessing
you.
it's like creative related or writing
It's
related.
it's actually leadership related.
Oh yeah,
Like
okay. Yeah.
yeah, and then so I feel like I've got a lot of like, okay, now I got to get back into that and and own up to it,
Hmm.
uh, carry that forward. And but it is because I'm like the only creative within the scholarships of who else, you know, um, is also was also approved. So then I've got that own other torch, to carry as well. I'm like, all right, so let's prove that creatives can still be this. And within all that, that brings us to the plant medicine, is because even though I've had things that I've excelled at in this area or the other, um, I'm still kind of lost in thought a lot. I Things can be cloudy. Um, I have like a lot of replaying memories, even if they're not that bad. I'll still just, like I've got a DVD catalog of things, like a library of DVDs, like a jukebox, and then it's just, and that can help with writing and that can help with storytelling for the ways that I can just access them and be like, okay, here it is. And I can just relive it. But that's
Hmm.
hard to have existing all the time. Um, and I feel like that I'm behind in ways to where some of my other friends that have just like found one thing and they're really good at that thing, and now at our age, 40s, they're pretty successful and they're not looking for what's next, and they know where they're at, and I feel like I've been kind of continually looking. I'm kind of tired of that. And one of the things that I found that helped with some stuff was plant medicine. I started off with a psilocybin trip here locally, not quite a hero's dose, but enough to like I like the term of being called like provide access um, to something that maybe already exists. Like I don't feel as if they are a trip to where like you're like, whoa, man, and like you're just like hallucinating about um imaginary stuff. It feels more like, hey, you're actually being able to see things that are happening that you don't really get to see otherwise.
Mhm, mhm.
And I heard some really good things about ayahuasca, and then turns out one of my Marine buddies has found healing through ayahuasca and spent years down in Peru, and now he lives there. And his name is Luke Jensen, and he has started an organization called Tiwa's Awakening. And you can see it like their website is tiwasawakening.com. And then, if anybody's interested in their stuff, definitely, like I encourage people to visit that website. Uh,
Tiwa's Awakening?
yeah,
What is
yeah,
T
yeah.
like
So
TW?
TIWAZ
Okay.
and then awakening.com. And so Tiwaz is a rune, and it's like an upward facing arrow, and it has a lot of different meanings. One of them being like kind of like the warrior, and then like ascending the healer. Uh, and I feel like I'm gonna, if not do it as much justice, but it's a like it again like an upward facing arrow is the rune,
Okay.
the Nordic rune, and awakening. So Tiwa's awakening, and the so I went down there as kind of one of their first groups. I really wanted to help start a nonprofit around it, but
Mhm.
it's another one of those things to where I take on too many things at times, and then within all the I'm just even just so busy with my own kids right now, like just going back to school because I'm taking
Yeah.
summer classes already, you
Yeah.
know, trying to do anything and block out a couple hours of time even is like it's hard to do.
Where was this retreat located? You said you went down to South America?
Yeah, yeah. So I was down in Peru, and it's in the Sacred Valley,
Mhm.
and then trying to think of like Urubamba is. I'm trying to think of how close that they are to that town. I'm forgetting exactly all the towns without looking at the map now.
Mhm.
But it's the Sacred Valley of Peru.
Yeah.
Um, and so I went for a 9-day retreat. And what is amazing about their retreat versus others is that they take you out into the community and into their community. And so they take you like one of the people that they're uh, a big part of, or like another community, like so like kind of micro communities within their own is jujitsu. So you do a couple of jujitsu classes and meet a guy that like fighters, like professional fighters come and train with, and then so you
Mhm.
can do a jujitsu class with them because that's really big on breaking down the ego. Because if you've got any type of ego about like it's going to get squished pretty easily by a expert jujitsu practitioner, because you're not going to be able to do anything like against them if you're
Mhm.
trying.
Mhm.
Um, and I actually tapped out just when he was laying on me. Like he wasn't even trying to submit me, like because again the elevation there as well is like I'm trying to think of how high it was, but like their standard elevation before you even get into the mountains is like you're like higher than Colorado already.
Oh,
You know,
okay. It's really hard to breathe up there.
Yeah, yeah. So that didn't help, and it doesn't also help that I'm not in shape anymore. But the other fact is just the way that they're able to, like position their bodies to provide pressure, like and just be heavy on you. And I was like, all right, let's, I'm tapping out here, bro. I can't even breathe. And then, so that was that was pretty cool to be there, and then um have that experience, and then they are involved in another community where a man has started a restaurant that he employs like single moms because he had a single mom. So he employs single moms to work there to, and to cook, and to, be the waitresses. And then the food was amazing. And
Mm.
then on the property is a little Montessori school to where
Mm.
the kids, like one of the moms can, or a couple, you know, and then, so then not only is he involved there, then they took us up to the mountains in Apu Asangate.
Okay.
Apus are what they call the mountains that are like representatives of gods. And then the Apu Asungate is a particular one that's like kind of the leader of the gods of this particular range. And so we got to hike up there and meet the kind of like gatekeeper of the valley, and his family, and the alpacas that they have there. And then we on through the hikes, there's then people living up in, like, far up in there to where,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, and it's like, because then it was also, what's amazing too is like this, I don't know, she looks like she was in her 60s, just all of a sudden pops out of one of the huts. And like we're sitting there on this hike, like a lot of us are just moving along at the fastest pace that we can go, like as we're trying to breathe up there. And she's hundreds of yards back when she sees us, and just motors up with a pack on of all of her stuff, to come lay it out and be like, hey, here's all my,
Like
alpaca creations, like,
stuff you can buy,
yeah,
little
yeah, yeah, yeah.
scarves
So then of course
and
you're buying, like, because you're like, are you gonna send her back to her hut without buying anything?
she probably gets some cool, a cool poncho or something.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So we got some cool stuff. I did end up getting a couple ponchos, but mostly I got smaller stuff like bracelets and stuff like that, to like, because I'm trying to learn. I've done this a few times. Like, I've over purchased souvenirs, uh for, because once I start buying some for somebody, I'm like, okay, now I've got 10 nieces and nephews, right? So like, I'm like, okay, so I need some for them, and then my sister, and okay, then my mom, and then my, of course, my wife, then my kids, and then maybe we'll get some for da 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 da, and and like, so then I just got this whole thing of just like kind of cheap souvenirs,
Hmm.
you know. But the actual medicine itself. So, well, um, the first night that I uh took the ayahuasca, because they do three sessions, and it's
Hmm.
at night. And also, the shaman was amazing. So we've got Luke, and Chinsia, his partner. She's also chief operations officer of TWAS. And then Bryce is the shaman. He's actually a white dude from Canada, which at first I was like, what? I'm gonna get gypped off, or like we come all the way here, and then like, this is my shaman, and
Hmm.
like, we got this, green, Canadian gringo. What's this? And I was upfront about that, talk to him. But
Yeah.
then, like, after having that experience, like, he was amazing, and I would recommend him to anyone and everyone. And then also, once I realized like how much that the shaman's energy changes your experience, it's nice to have it with someone, because again, what they do is they don't have more than 6 guests there, where other places can have as much as like 30 that you're all in a room, right? And then you don't get to talk to your shaman. Um, Sometimes, and for one, you need to speak Spanish, uh, uh, most times, and then two, some of them, more traditional ones, don't want any communication, besides in the experience. And then, like, with Bryce, he talks to you beforehand, and then afterwards he's a part of the hikes and everything. So then you get to have this relationship with him, which I think is, again, something that's really unique about them. And also, Luke implements neurofeedback and brain mapping throughout
Oh,
the
cool.
process. And so you're able to get a before brain map and an after brain map, and you can
Oh,
actually,
interesting.
yeah, and so you can see the actual physiological changes that are happening, and have data that shows it. And
What
then
what did you see in yours?
and then this is where, so there was like changes in neuroplasticity, right?
Mhm.
That just showed, like basically kind of like opening. And we actually have a call here soon to explain it more, because that's why I told Luke. I was like, even though you explained it to me once right there, I need like to see data, and I need to have it like written down better.
Yeah,
Um,
like, explain it.
yeah, so that I can re-explain it, because since I don't know it well enough myself. But it
Yeah.
was, you know,
But you
uh,
can see something happening. I've heard they say there's like opportunity for neuroplasticity, like new connections to be
yep,
made.
mhm,
Yeah. So that's kind
yeah.
of what you're seeing in the like he provides some data that actually shows you that's occurring.
Yep, yep. And some of the stuff that he's doing is like there aren't other people doing it yet, and so he's kind of pioneering some stuff like within the full on brain maps, and during the neurofeedback as well, like while you're there. And because he talks about neurofeedback being something that's really akin to the plant medicines, like that they can help, like basically bringing modern technology into the ancient practices. Um,
Interesting.
and so, but like for my experience, um, so the first one, all I did was throw up like 7 times, like violently, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And it was just cleared out my system, like, and from what I realized later was that it was the medicines were cleaning me out before they were going to allow themselves to work. Like
Hmm.
they weren't even coming in. Like,
Yeah.
like we're not going to participate in this until we've got you cleaned out. And the next night I went, and when I felt it, it was pretty obvious. Like, oh, here we go. And it was amazing. And this could be totally its own podcast in itself. Uh, and so I feel like the easiest way to describe it, I'll get into the details, but I feel like the easiest way to describe it is that it is something that I think some people with some really strong religious beliefs may have some hesitation towards this kind of stuff. And I know because some people did that talked to me. They're like, hey, be careful. This is a way to open yourself up to be vulnerable to the devil, and this kind of a thing. And I can also kind of see some of the imagery that I saw. I could kind of see why that they may think that. But I feel as if that people shouldn't be scared of it in that way, and think that it is like, oh, this is the devil's magic. But more so like having these experiences, or to me, it's kind of like a confirmation that God is real. Um,
Wow.
yeah, for like, but it's just who God is the thing, to where it's like you don't know, like, because this is what it was for me, is that um so it's good to go ahead and get into the details of what happened. So
Yeah.
um once the medicine takes, so we're in a dark room, it's at night, uh and but like, so the again, we're in the sacred valley, so like the ceiling kind of just disappears, and then I can see the mountains that are around us, uh of the valley, and then they are actually, just like these sacred, all-knowing mothers that they're they don't quite have faces and stuff, but they're, that's what the mountains are, just mothers that are welcoming us uh to the valley. And there were these giant celestial beings that reached up as high as like the clouds, um kind of made out of light, and again, faceless, but um like bipedular, like 2 legs and 2 arms, uh, and the arms tapered down into like these long, again, like from as high as the clouds, right? And then tapered down in these long needles, and they just started like performing surgery on me. Um,
Oh.
like into my, like, what I didn't realize is I thought this was all going to be mental, right? And all going to be like visual, and like maybe I was going to go somewhere. I did one ketamine treatment, and in that ketamine treatment, I felt like that like months ago, and in that ketamine treatment, I felt like I traveled forward, like into like this kind of like hallucination, and it
Hmm.
felt more like a hallucination.
Hmm.
Um, but with the ayahuasca, it felt like I didn't go anywhere, and rather it wasn't a hallucination, but I was just seeing, right, this what was happening, and this those doctors, Dr. Citos is actually what they call them. I found out later that like the shaman actually invites them in. And what I loved about not having any information is sometimes I don't even want to share some of this stuff because I don't want people going in and then feeling like, oh, well, I planted this in my brain because I knew it was going to happen. Like the
Hmm.
things that happens in both of my experiences, I found out later that like these are things that are being asked to be brought in. um, and then some really common imagery that other people have seen as well, which then kind of you believe in like a collective consciousness, um, because hey, look at us seeing these same things. And then scientists will try to explain some of these things a lot, and I feel like they're kind of just trying to over explain it and also just deny any other kind of like mystical type
Hmm.
thing. But anyway, so what I didn't realize is like on places in my body that hurt, um, especially like my spine. I hurt my L3 through S1, like by lifting up a transmission and putting it in the back of a Humvee because I was like, you know, people like, we need a forklift. And I was like, yeah, eh, fuck.
I got this.
Um,
Step aside.
yeah, yeah. And then, just jumping off the back of a 7-ton truck and landed flat-footed, like really jarred my spine too once. And that's just something simple, but had my pack on and just being like, instead of just getting out of it and climbing down it and just jumping off of it. So I don't know, either way. But where I heard it, so like L3 through S1 are all bulging and stuff. I feel like if you're telling me a story, or even if I see you, or like with my kids, when my kids are running on the street, like we've got a street that has really rough asphalt, like where they put tar down and then they put chunky gravel on and then roll it over, so it's like really chunky. So if
Hmm.
you fall on it, you're gonna bleed. Uh,
Hmm.
and it's happened. So I see it. Like when they're running, I watch them in my mind. I watch them fall and cut themselves, and that's part of where some of my stuff goes to, is like it gets worse. Like if we're out on a sidewalk, I see them get run over by cars and stuff, and like all this stuff goes through my head, and I go through the experience, and then I feel it in a collective shooting pain in my spine where I hurt myself. Um, and it's a real pain, like it's a real sensation,
Hmm.
and I feel it. I'm like, yeah. And those doctors were working on that, like it's and I've got this pain that goes down the sacroiliac joint and all the way down my right leg, and then they were working on that, and just and then all of a sudden there was this distraction, and then I'm like feeling like, wait a minute, no, is this not real? This da -da. And then I look, and it's this kid in a mask. Actually, it's a creature in a mask. It's kind of scary at first. I'm like, oh, what's this? And anytime I would get distracted from letting myself be healed, it was this creature in a mask, and then kind of smaller stature, and then it kind of pops up, and it's actually like its mask pops up, and I realized that it's a kid playing tricks on me, um, trying to distract me from something. And then how I equated that was I found that that was my ego, that I met my
Hmm.
ego as a kid that is constantly um, throwing me off of whatever I'm doing, because it wants attention.
Oh, wow. You did some
Right.
big like psychological internal exploration and healing here, it
Yeah.
sounds like.
It's huge. Yeah. I mean, this
Yeah.
was like because it's going there, and then this is what I'm saying is even while we're talking, I'm like, man, I wish I would have sped up all the stuff about, earlier so that we could get to here because there's so much good stuff here.
Yeah, yeah. Take your time.
Okay. Um, and like I'm still trying to implement that as a lesson, right? Because this is what this is all about is implementing this stuff. Like I didn't do so well about bringing the stuff home because we came home right into a move. And I during my move, our move over, because we just moved across the street, and someone told me that that's the worst kind of move ever, and I was like, I don't believe you. And then it happened, and then it was because we didn't pack everything. Like it just things just bringing one thing over at a time, and it took it, like it was a really stressful time, and we like redid the floors in this house, and I drank the whole time,
Mm. Drink
like
alcohol.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I used that because there was an excuse because I'm moving.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Gotta,
Like, yeah, well,
yeah.
yeah, and so like I um like doing that negated a lot of what I'd learned, or the energy that I brought home. So I'd be curious to get another brain map now to see where I'm at, because like when we did the follow-up stuff, I'm like, hey, I'm not implementing the stuff the way that I should be, and here's a big, that's a big disconnect from it. Um,
Um,
and because what I'd like to do is like microdose psilocybin, and uh, but just doing so is still kind of weird of like where you get it, like right now I just uh only know from getting it from a guy, and
yeah.
then like that's its own thing, and then you got to do that, and you can grow it and all this kind of stuff, but either way, what I'm trying to learn from that is like, hey, when something comes up, because I've seen some people out there that are working on their egos, because I'm trying to think of who does the 75 hard. I was doing the 75 hard thing for a while, and then it's like, and then if your inner bitch voice comes out, you know what I mean? Then you tell that inner bitch, not today. And I kind of get that. I do like, and I'm like, yeah, that's a cool way. Well, that, that kind of screwed me up because I was doing that and I was trying to go through it. Um, and then if you're following it to a T, and if you're not gonna, and if you're gonna be honest about it, to say that you made it all the way through, um, like I don't know how many days that I'd done it, maybe 15 or 20, and one of them was like you've always got to like do two separate workouts, and I think they both had to be outside. They always had to be outside, and then it was a day that I was like I just didn't get the second one in, but like the first one could have like been equated as two or whatever. And then like I was talking to like the other guy that I was like, we're supposed to be accountability buddies. Like, nope, you're done. You lost it.
Okay.
And
This is a like a workout program, 75
yeah, yeah,
hard. I don't
yeah.
know it.
Yeah. So if it's like pretty hardcore, and like, but that's the point around it is that since that's what they're talking about is your inner bitch voice, right? And that's how they call that's what they call the ego. So then you're fighting it and you're treating it as your inner bitch. And then if that's how you're talking to it, and then if it wins, well, then now you let your bitch voice win. Now you're just a bitch. And then I was like, that's really dangerous, like, and then if anybody's hearing me, that is a 75 hard, they're like, well, that's because you are bitch. Like, that's how I feel like that's kind of the attitude that is breeding. Right. And then I was like, well, that's not an inner my ego isn't an inner bitch. It's not a dark, scary warrior that I need to fight and combat. My ego is this kid that needs attention. And if I just look at it and just give it attention for just a second, just to say, hey, I see you. I see you. Okay, what do you need? All right, gotcha. Go back and play. I got to do adult stuff now. And
Mm,
then like doing that, if I can be cognizant and do that, when I catch my ego being the thing that's driving whatever I'm about to do or say, it works and it works really well. And then I can smile and I can laugh, instead of feeling like, again, like, oh, look at my inner bitch voice winning. And so I felt like a huge revelation to come from
Yeah,
that.
that's huge. I was just gonna say that. I was just gonna say, wow, if you got that from plant medicine, that sounds like a massive revelation, or I heard some people call them downloads, you know. You got a
Yeah.
big download there to
Yeah.
like you don't have to squash your ego or your inner child. You have to like maybe transcend it, work together with it.
Right. Right.
That's beautiful, man. That's huge.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And that's,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. And then again, it's just now remembering that, right?
Yeah. Keeping it
Um,
with you in your life going forward, I
in the
guess is the
daily. Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah. Because, and I do see it. And I also will be reminded of it when I'm doing that with my kids. When my kids are, when I'm trying to do something, and because they get a lot of me time, they get a lot of mom time, but they still want more, right? And it's like, mom, 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 dad, 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 hey, 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 hey. And if you're focused on something, um, so many times you can, instead of like, because you want to get your task done, and you do want to see their thing, but you're like just trying to shut them out because you just like, hey, look, I got to do this one thing. But so often, if you just do stop what you're doing for a second, look at them and be like, hey, what is it? Oh, wow. That is so cool. I love that. Hey, we're going to look at that more in a little bit. Okay. I'm just going to focus on this and continue this, and then we can do that. So often, then that allows them to say, okay. And then they can go be themselves again for a minute. And like, it's like the same with the ego. And so I'm like, that's huge. And because
See,
like,
I could see why you got a leadership scholarship. That's
yeah,
good
from,
leadership, man. That's good.
oh, thanks. Thanks.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
and that's where I want to get back into, because I've had a couple public speaking opportunities, and those make money. And I would
yeah,
love to do more, but I'm still trying to figure out, what am I talking about? And then even on the leadership side, like, how am I going to implement myself as a leader in this scholarship community? And part of it is like trying to continue to fight for like this kind of thing, and I would love to continue to advocate for this, but I've got a lot of things I've still got to button up my own life, to like feel like that I'm living what I'm advocating.
yeah.
Uh, and another really cool thing about this experience, um, is what I got to see was, I also got to go see myself as a kid,
Hmm.
and I got to see the kid who was, even though people would comment, they're like, man, he's so happy still throughout the circumstances of being in between the families and all that kind of stuff. And I could hear that as a kid, and hear like, you know, oh, look at Bobby, he's beyond his years and all this kind of stuff. But but what I saw was, I saw myself, like playing alone, and just like always just wishing for that family, wishing to have a nuclear family, and to, when I would make wishes in a wishing well, I would just always wish that I would have a family and be a good dad. you know
Wow.
I just want to be a good dad. And then, so what I did is I got to take him take that little boy, and then bring him into my house and show him wrestling with his kids, and playing, and the laughter, and like, this is where you will be. And that was pretty cool. So I'm like, I want to print pictures of young me and put them in my living room, so that I'm reminded, so I can show him, because I can forgive that boy so much easier than I can forgive the man that I see in the mirror, you
Mm.
know. And then, so there's times to where I'm like, remember that boy, because there's also times with ego too, if like, if you say something that offends me, the reason that I get defensive about it is because I'm defending that little boy, and then,
Mm.
so there's times to where it's like, okay, let's understand that, but let's also like realize that the boy's good. You don't have to defend the boy. Because I get reactive still. Like the book I'd like to write about is called like creating space, and basically understanding the reactive dog, and then talk about like my dogs and talk about some reaction stuff that they have, but also like but in me as well, because I'm still a reactive dog, more than I'd like to be. Like my energy can switch. I'm known as to be very patient and very cool, uh, tempered, and a lot of stuff. But people that know me really well also know that somebody says something the wrong way, or like some little dig or something like that, or even just somewhat being a dick on the street or whatever. All of a sudden, there's like a whole different, you know the
Yeah.
reactive dog, and
Right.
I know the people that I look up to aren't like that,
Yeah.
and
It
I would like.
sounds like you got a lot out of this experience, though. So you did this plant medicine experience one time, and like some of these things you're saying are like this is like years of therapy level
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then that's because like the next time that I did it, um,
Was this on the same retreat or a different
on the
retreat?
same retreat. Yeah, so you do it 3 times. First time was no reaction, just throwing up.
Yeah.
Second time was the one that I told you, and there's still like so much more, like within there, all these other little details that I saw. But I'll just get to the second one too, because the second one was also the one that made me realize that's like you've really got to have a good shaman, because if there's a shaman that like is a little bit jaded, like, hey, here I am just doing this for this whole group of gringos that came down here again, and I I'm tired of this, but I'm doing it for because I've, whatever. If there's any type of energy like that, they could change your experience. Because so the second night, or the third night technically, but the second time that I was experiencing it, connected with the medicine, snakes started coming, and I was like, oh, this is different.
Like you
You
started to
know,
see snakes kind of like crawling around or
coming
something.
towards me.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, and they were like adolescents, and I didn't know what they were up to. And one thing that I've realized too is growing up, I was like, or not growing up, as I'm getting older, I was like, there's nothing scarier than like a group of teenagers that are out by themselves. I'm like, what are you guys up to?
Right. Right.
Yeah, and so that's how these snakes felt. But then when the shaman started his singing, then they came back to him, and then like they got their feedback and then came back to me, and then boom, big python, just like massive, starts coming towards me, and all slow and kind of moving like this, and moving with the as the shaman is singing like "Naya Shemaya Shemaya." And so like that's what like the shaman's singing, right?
Yeah.
So then the snake comes up, and then she's like, looks at me. Many things were feminine. She was like, she had beautiful, like kind of translucent, um, scales, like kind of like those paint jobs on cars that are purple, that kind of like, psh,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah, I know what you mean.
right? And then just beautiful, soulful eyes. And then she looked at me, and she was like asking for permission, and I just nodded my head, and then she nodded her head, and then she just came inside my body, and then wrapped around you know like basically my intestines, and then she looked at me again, and she's like, are you ready? And I was like, yeah. And then she just constricted, and I had my plate, or I had my my throw up bowl ready, because I knew. And then she just constricted, and then just and I just
Oh,
threw up everything, and she just crushed what like basically like stones that had been built up, and whether that was toxic uh food and
yeah.
drink, and chemicals that were in my body, or also trauma, and etc. Like she just crushed that, and then just and I purged that.
Wow. Like
Yeah.
trauma and microplastics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, microplastic trauma for sure. But a little bit of both.
Yeah, a little combo.
Yeah, yeah. And so that was amazing. And especially like the I felt she was taking care of me so much, you know, like she was there. And then because she asked me, because they give you the chance for more medicine, you know, like like, would anybody like a bigger dose? And as she was working, and as the other snakes were working on the same areas that hurt, um, the again that the physical level, the way that they worked on pain really just blew me away. Um, and because I literally physically felt better, and then that's where
Wow.
like the body keeps the score, you know, like that whole thing. Like this
Yep.
is like this was so real. And again, this is where I said that what to like believing in God, it was evident that like this was so like all these beings, they were working for Mother Earth. Mother Earth was the one that was sending them to me. Um, and yet uh, there she still, it was obvious that she was reporting to something beyond her.
Wow.
And yeah.
And this is just kind of like I've heard it described as like in the experience, you just kind of like know this.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was no, because like I've talked to some people that were like, oh, yeah, yeah. Because they gave us the information, like, maybe be careful who you share this with, only in the terms of, because there will be a lot of people that will just try to negate your experience. Right.
Mhm.
And so when I was telling someone about it, and they were trying to, like, do the psychology around it and be like, oh, okay, so your brain is doing this and your brain is like making it this way, you
Your
know.
brain's like making the story and making
Right,
the hallucination.
right,
Right, right.
right. And then I was like, well, but what the thing is though, is when you're in there though, there's no way to describe it besides doing it, because you know this isn't like you're getting access to a place that exists, like the spiritual world is a real thing. It's here. We just don't get to see it very often, and these plants provide access to it, and the plants are alive, man. Like, they are alive. And they know what to do. Like, they knew what to do in me, like the way that they went to places that hurt, like they knew that, like, it was like, and there's this whole machine, this whole design, all these other things. Like, it would take me, I mean, it could be easy, like a series. Like, it'd be hard to even make these 2 nights into one movie, of how many different aspects of things that were really going on, and what I got to see. Um, and because another part too, like my tongue actually came out and became a panther. And
Wow.
yeah, and then like looked back at me, and was like, "Hey, I am your power. I am your strength." Like, um, which is kind of funny, because when you think about that, you think about language and how
That's
important, right?
that's what I was gonna say. Word, the tongue, words. You're a
Yeah.
writer.
Yeah. And then also, because it's also kind of funny, because like, and I haven't been following it through, but like tongue health, like people are getting like more, you know, it's one of those kind of a fatty type thing, but
I've heard of this tongue scraping. You
right.
heard of this? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
I just did, right? And then that's what's funny, is because like the Panther was kind of asking for that, being like, I am all of this for you. You got to take better care of me, right? And I
Hmm.
was like, yeah, because like I brush my teeth, but I brush my tongue whenever I do, but I don't get all the way back. There's times when I stick out my tongue all the way and look back there, and like, whoa. I
It's
don't know if you.
interesting. It's very interesting to me too, because like like there's friends who try to say, well, it's just something within your psychology. It's just a hallucination. But whether it's just your psychology or not, you still got the message to like take better care of your body and like a very
Right.
specific way. So
Yeah.
that's still like actually useful, whether it's
Right.
from inside you or from somewhere else.
Right. Exactly. And then that's again, like, so here's the information. What are you going to do with it?
Hmm.
And that's where I've got to do better on that. And I was just telling my wife, about how I've got to, because I've lost the cycling was huge. That helped for a while. And like the any times that I've been involved in groups, I do well with, like, activity wise. But ever since my brother died, on when I'm working out by myself, uh, it's just really harder for me to stay motivated. Invasive thoughts pop in really hard. And then, just everything got heavier, you know, um, like literally, not just metaphorically, but literally. I'm just like,
Mhm.
man, things are heavy now.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I've got to start like working out in the morning. Um, and because one of the things I didn't realize about insecurity, I used to think that insecurity was like kind of like a state of mind. And I didn't realize that how actually being physically insecure, like when your body, like even like as I'm sitting right now, I feel it in my back. So then when you have that physical insecurity of like like when a building is insecure and it's wobbly, then that can be a part of that reactiveness because like when a dog is wounded, right? Like there's a chance you have more of a chance of being bitten by a dog that's wounded and feels vulnerable. And then
Yeah.
you add that into like financial security and like so not being financially secure, not knowing the security for just your day to day, for the job, all those things, add up into like literally being insecure. And then of course your personality and can be insecure because of all those other insecurities.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm like, if I know that and see that, then here's the plan to get out of it. And because that's what I'd like to write the book about. And I've been talking about it for a couple of years, but I gotta do it and get out of it before I can speak on it.
Yeah. And you had mentioned when you went to the plant medicine, you were also looking for some of that creativity and motivation for your next
I was.
project. Do you
Yeah,
feel
yeah,
like
I
you
was. And I
feel
think
like
a
you
lot
got
of it
some
is
of that?
there. Yeah, I do. And I would like to do it. I think I would like to go again. And just time wise is always tough to block out time because I'm gonna go see my mom for her 80th birthday. And then I have a couple days that I need to attend for the scholarship stuff. So to get a couple days of away from the family obligations is pretty hard to do.
Yeah. And getting down to South America, it's not an
Yeah,
easy
well,
trip.
yeah, and then that's what's great about them too, and with Tiwaz and Luke and kind of the entire community is they encourage you to find local stuff, and there's psilocybin stuff happening here in Oregon. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
some of it's like if you do it through the legal processes, it's really expensive.
Yeah.
But if you find, you know, uh, amethyst and her husband's oak tree, like, and just you can do it for a couple $100 with them in the woods,
Yeah.
versus the 3,000 that it takes to do it like legally at the shop,
Yeah. 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 For
and
sure.
which is sad.
For sure.
But um yeah, so there's good healing there, and I know time wise we got to get wrapping up.
Oh
um
yeah. It's
so
okay
but
though. Don't rush. We wrap up soon.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
um but the so the even as powerful as those were, um, there was two other medicines that we did too. One was Huachuma,
Okay.
which was a drink that we had, and we went to these like sacred temples. They're like where these like virgin priestess lived, and then we met people that lived still up in there, where it took us, I don't know, hours to hike up to. And then this is where people live in the villages up there, and they had dogs and like there was like alpacas and a couple llamas up there. And there was this moment where I was just I was sitting, and it was like Cinderella type moment, where we had said hello to these burros down the way, and then we came up and stopped, and there was like some alpacas sitting around, and stopped to talk to them. And then I've got a video on it. I'll try to find the link. I think I shared it on Facebook. Maybe I can send you the link to where you can see some of it. But all of a sudden, all the animals like started coming to me, and like the when the donkeys came in and like just put their heads into mine as I was just sitting there, I was like, "Is this really happening?" But then I had these little flowers that I tucked into my backpack strap. And then when the donkeys came, he was just kind of munching on that a little bit. And I was like, so is this all you're doing? Like, did you just come here for
They
to,
want the
to
flowers.
eat these little flowers, you know? But at the
Yeah.
same time, like I still took it as like that having that Wachuma put me on a level that opened me up to them, and they sensed me being open to that same level, and that's what brought them to me. Some people really loved that whole experience. I enjoyed it, but I didn't feel it was like my favorite. Because what did become my favorite was the third thing that we were exposed to or had the opportunity to do, which was bufo, which
Okay.
is from from a frog. It actually exists a lot in Arizona, and it's like this 5-DMT. Like there's a anyone that knows like would know it better, but it's a type of DMT, and it has the number 5 in it somewhere, right?
Yeah. Five. I think it's 5 MEO.
See, there you go.
We've had other guests on who have done like similar retreats, so I remember.
Okay, yeah, okay, cool, cool. So I'm glad that you knew that because I was feeling bad about
Yeah.
not.
No, it's all
Yeah, so
good.
5-MeO DMT.
Yeah.
And what was great about that was, and this is something that because I feel like that's the thing that I could do again to help me get back to like where I felt when I came home before like I drank for every night for like 2 straight weeks while I was moving.
Yeah.
Um, because even though I learned all that stuff in the ayahuasca and then I had all those things, I still was carrying stuff with me that was like inside, that like kind of I'm like, hey, I don't feel. I'm glad that I had these experiences, but it's not like like, and you have been healed, like there was
Uh-huh.
there was none of that. And then I did that uh bufo, and then it's weird, like if you see it, it looks like you're smoking crack the way that you do it. It's just
Okay.
how
Yeah.
it's done, right?
Yeah.
So so anyone that sees that, like, just don't judge it for that. That's just how it's just got to be. Like you
You kind of
use
have
it
to like
for
torch it and get it cooking.
yeah. And so what happened with that was when I inhaled it, upon the exhale was just any like it was just like this was what the exhale was it's not my fault. Bah. And then it was just like it's nobody's fault. Anything that I had done that I blame myself for, just gone. Anything that anybody else had done to me, even if it was like legit, was like, that's okay. It's not their fault. They got their own stuff. Everybody's doing their own thing. And that to me, that whole feeling and that of just like, again, we are all connected. We're all just in this one thing, this one place. We're all just trying to do the best that we can do with our silly little human brains that try to think too much and make too much sense of everything and get in the way. Like, it's no one's fault. And that to me, especially for like my own self, I just put a lot of things on myself. And that's just not good for anybody around me because then when I put that on myself, then it just makes me less of a version of myself. And that's where sometimes the self work is that's why it's not just for you, it's for the people around you, because if you can be the better version of yourself, then you're better for everyone else. And so that's what I felt was like kind of the more powerful, even though I appreciate the visions and everything, and so many things that I learned from the ayahuasca, the bufo, the way that it made me feel afterwards, was like just a lot of weight just got poured out of me.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. So I would definitely recommend all of these things. for anybody. And I feel like more people, honestly, if more people had these experiences, I just feel like it'd be better for humanity on a like a much larger scale, because these are the types of things that, just everything's so divisive, especially right now. And then in our own country, I feel like it's embarrassing. I feel like it's just absolutely embarrassing how the stances that people are taking that are so hard against each other, and that if you are involved in anything else, like, because being in the middle is still a threat to people. Because if
Yeah.
you're in the middle, then you're like, well, if you're in the middle, then you're not on my side. And then if you're not on my side, then you're one of them.
You
And
think people come out of these psychedelic experiences just with a greater feeling of connectedness and like we're all in this together despite our differences?
I do. And I also feel like, so this is something that I talk about often too, is the overview effect, right? So astronauts have the overview effect, from, when they get to travel and see, out of space, and then look back at the Earth, and then see the Earth and be like, whoa, look at us. We're all just on this one blue planet together. And so then they'll come back and like they'll be, humanitarians, and a lot of it is because of that overview effect. And I feel like we can, one, plant medicine can help us get that. But then also, if you just open your perspective to it and just watch it on a screen and let it be, and like I feel like we can, it's that easy to get the overview effect that they got by
Nice.
just opening yourself up to their shared experiences and be like, wow, look at this. But it's sadly human nature to become tribal, and and that's one of the things that I noticed too, like while I was just traveling the country, was that, people are the same. People, everyone has their differences, but people are the same everywhere you go, at the same time that they're different, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And especially like that's why I like traveling, was that when I wasn't living in one spot, it was so much easier to have even credibility of saying, hey, well, this is what's going on here, and this is how things are over here. And then once you land somewhere, and then especially if you get into your community, or, like, and the way that people think, if you don't think the way that people think around you, then it just gets a lot harder to exist. And then like conforming is almost like necessary for survival. And then it's just sad, because like, you know, we we got to we just got to do better about understanding each other. And then that's one of the things I want to try to do with photography, is somehow, you know um capture stories and ways that bring that back, like, and then help people that don't get to have those experiences, but maybe you can have it through photography. And whether that's some of the places that I get to travel and stories, or even I'm looking at doing more like farewell pet photography, to where try to capture like a diverse range of people and their animals, because I learned how much people connected to me through my love for my dog. And like from around a huge diverse population of people that like connected with that love. And then I felt like that maybe if I do that with more people, like a diverse amount of people with a diverse amount of animals, and then share their stories, that could just be one little sliver of way to be like, hey, now I'm sharing this book or this thesis project of these um these people and their relationships with these animals, and then like what it means to lose them. And then, that's just something, that's just one more way that we can connect. And we need to find more ways that we can connect with people and connect with each other, rather than more ways to prove why we are right.
Dude, that's amazing. It sounds like you got a lot out of the plant medicine journey, but it sounds like you had a good head on your shoulders before you went into it as well. But I also think you are a shining example of the theme that I was mentioning earlier that we've been talking about a few times of PTS-G, the post-traumatic growth, because you seem like you've really grown and like expanded yourself and your consciousness and your healing, and hopefully that reaches others because you certainly had your hardships and um certainly an amazing story. So I love to see that growth.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. And then that's I'm still working on it. I still have a long ways to go, for sure. And I think one of the harder things though too is like then also learning how to implement that into ways, and still, like not be like a nihilist with some of the things that need to be taken care of, like there's times like, well, this doesn't matter, man, like, and then like, well, yeah, then all of a sudden when you realize that now you've never had debt before, but now you do because you weren't paying attention, to this, and then, or you didn't get this thing done, and like that's where, my own organization and all that kind of stuff still needs a lot of help, and also just, like I can't not want to do like the photography stuff, and I really want to get um like in the back of me also just wants to have taken the position that where someone offered me a job that would have paid well and it would have been secure, but the job was like to be a manager of this tech thing of things that I don't even understand, and that I was like, this sounds horrible. Like I don't want to spend my time that way. I got to do this other thing. But I also, and that's part of the scholarship stuff too, is also not just the scholarship, but the mentorship within the community. As I mentioned to them, it's like, I got to, if I'm going to do this photography stuff and continue to do storytelling and like write another book, I've got to have, I've got to be making this make money because I have to support my family. I can't be continuing to be like, even like the things that I wrote about when I was with my dog, and it was her and I on the trip. It was a lot easier to have some of these things and be like, and now we're just going to take the road that goes to nowhere and see where it takes us. And it's like,
Right.
that was cool, but that was easy to do when I didn't have any more responsibilities. And now it's like, hey, make sure you're, you know, um, not letting it to where finances are affecting your mood and then like your kids. Cause I've always said that I didn't want to ever yell at my kids for leaving a light on.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I want to let them know, hey, we don't want to waste energy, but I don't want to hear it. I don't want it ever to come out in their household of, do you know how much the electricity bill costs? You know,
Right.
and
Right.
like
Right. Right.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we're getting there.
Yeah, man. Well, it sounds like you got a lot of amazing things coming. You got the scholarship, you got the photography, maybe another book, maybe Dog Named Beautiful will go into a movie. So and potentially more plant medicine ceremonies as well.
Yes, definitely want to do more plant medicine, and I want to make that like a baseline. I actually reached out. I haven't heard back yet because I would love to be like an advocate because I feel like that people people trust me when I say like to trust this.
Hmm.
And I feel like that I could be a good advocate. But I also need to be a good practitioner, or even you know patient, I guess, is I don't know, that's a user, I guess.
Yeah,
So
you're a
I want
patient. You're your patient and your own doctor.
yes, exactly.
You're your
Yeah,
own practitioner and your own patient.
yeah, yeah. And then that's so yeah, basically. And the bigger thing too, back to the movie, like if that we need that, if that would happen, that could change so much because then the children's books and then a second book would just be that much more desirable because they're like, oh hey, because you've got this too,
Now you
so
got some buzz on you. Now you got some
yeah,
heat going. Yeah,
yeah,
man,
yeah, yeah. So trying to light that up.
for sure. Well, you know how it all works. Yeah, I think you'll get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll have to come back, like whatever the next project is, whether it's the kids book, the photography, the movie, maybe you find some, new plant medicine thing that you want to share. Whatever it is, please come back and share it because this has been amazing. And yeah, I'd love to have you on to hear your story.
Awesome, man. Yeah, it was great to be here, and I appreciate it. And again, a big thank you to you, and then again all of your guests as well. And there's so many more, like the guy that works with the horses,
Justin Dunn.
Justin Dunn. Man, like, oh my God, I want to meet him. And then also because I could echo so many things just from my one experience with horses. In that realm too, that like again another perspective opener, and so many of the people that you've had on, you're doing a great thing by sharing these stories, and like I've been motivated by a lot of the guests that you've had on. So keep doing this, man. This is it's doing something.
Dude, thank you, man. That really means a lot to me. And yeah, thanks for listening to the other episodes too. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah, of course, man.
Cool, man. Well, we'll leave it there, and you'll definitely have to be back on sometime soon.
Okay, yeah, I'll be there, and then we can go through and see if I can survive the podcast.
Perfect. Sounds good.
All right, brother.